Okay. Turn that down. Peace, love, unity. This brother Dooley. Um, it's been a while, a very, very long time since I did a video alive. And I felt compelled to go on live and share some experiences, some information, some things that I could share with the family. Um, I'm at a place in my life right now, in a time in my life right now, where if I feel like I have nothing to say at the moment, then I'm not gonna make a video, you know? And it's like we live in a weird time kind of with social media and all that. And I know a lot of people who do videos, they keep up for things for their audience and stuff like that, which is all good. But but where I'm at in my life right now, if I'm living my life, if I'm going through my changes, if I'm learning things on my end, I'm gonna take a break for myself to honor that, and when spirit tells me it's time to get going and do a video with folks and share, then that's what I do. So I was called to do that. It's a pleasure to be on here, to be able to share. It's a pleasure for those who are coming on and checking it out. I appreciate it. Hold on. Of course, somebody's going to try to call while I'm doing this. It always happens like that. But yeah, I want to start off with a little chant before I start. Just set the tone. So this is Chenrizi. Chenrizi is a bodhisattva within the Tibetan Buddhist tradition that deals with love and compassion. I've been working with this particular mantra for some years now, since the early 2000s, though that was my main practice when I was learning a lot about Tibetan Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Vajrayana, Hinayana, and learning about also, Chenrizi and Green Tara specifically, So I'm going to chant that with y'all. It goes, and it's funny, one of my martial art teachers, he's a great elder. He utilizes the Umane Padme Hum mantra or Chenrizi mantra as well as a way to open up the energy in your body and to move things in your body, right? So, the brother says, Dark Scholar, what is the mantra? Is O-M or A-U-M. The proper way is A-U-M. Mani, M-A-N-I, Padme, P-A-D-M-E, Mani Padme Hum. It's two ways, H-U-M, or sometimes you might see it H-U-N-G. All right. And that deals with the Bodhisattva Chenrizi. Bodhisattvas is a concept within Buddhism that deals with the concept of a person on the brick of enlightenment, of the brick of union, and pushing off that total realization because they come back constantly for the sake of all sentient beings, right? In one way, when we think in human ways, then this is what I'm going to be talking a lot about on this video. When we think in human ways, then we're going to be thinking a lot about like time. So someone could say, oh, that's a long time. We're talking about eons. You know what I mean? Someone just coming back. Why would they do that? But an eon can be a blink of an eye. You know what I mean? When we deal with outside the realm of time. And I'm going to go into that. And when we really talk about going into union with Great Spirit, there's something that goes beyond time and space, and there's a level of so much wisdom and love, then you would understand why you would want to be there. You know what I mean? And how one would want to make sure everybody else gets there too. Because in all actuality, it's all part of each other, you know, oneness. So do you have a lawnmower? No, I don't. But what you might have heard was this little toy that my son was playing with. It was like a type of thing. So it might have been that. Somebody says, I need it back to mow soon. Or I don't know what it means, the comments on that. But well, I'm going to go straight into it. Mani pe me Mani pe me Be me Mane Be me Okay. There's different ways of approaching chanting. There's different ways of approaching sound vibration. The main thing and the best thing is to do it the way it fits for you. Each person in the universe and beyond has their own particular frequency, you know, their own energetic signature. And each of us has their own way of approach. That's a time, that particular chant is a chant of an energetic signature that's very old, that deals with love, that deals with the level of compassion. It's a signature. But also each person has their own particular signature. Just like it was snowing out here yesterday, and every snowflake had its own particular unique snowflake, you know, that made up all that great snow, you know. You have to find your own way, you know. It's important. Myself, the biggest lessons that I got this year, you know, and this is where the lessons are going to really highlight, is from this book right here. And I'm going to go into this book. People that know me know that I'm a lover of graphic novels, comic books, sci-fi, all those things, you know. So I have a couple of books that and graphic novels that I read recently that I think is right on point with a lot of different things that are happening collectively on the world stage, and also in our individual lives, you know. One of the biggest lessons that I got is that a person has to be authentically themselves. And I'll speak from experience because I feel this was a great lesson for myself. You know, there was a lot of times in my life that I felt like I was a people pleaser, you know, and doing my own self analyzation, I didn't understand that until a lot of other things, life experiences that allowed me to see more things about myself and why I approach the world and choose to be that way. It was a good friend of mine. She one day said something to me that I didn't agree with. And instead of approaching her and talking to her about it, I just sat on it. And the more I sat on it, the more I felt uncomfortable with not speaking upon it. That led to me even projecting upon another person because I was going through some financial hardship during that week. But the lessons came up from all those situations, and that's why I say things we could look at ourselves as victims, or we could look at things from many different angles. I choose to look through some of these situations I go through in life as lessons. So to me, when I looked at it, I seen two things: speaking my mind, especially in the fact when you know that what is being presented to you is not your truth, because we can sometimes see people from our own lens, and everyone has their own perceptions, right? And that's not to take away how some people sees a person or a thing. To one person, someone could be the knight in shining armor. To somebody else's experience, that person can be an asshole, you know? And that's what I was even learning in this graphic novel of reading this the second time. Perceptions. If I was able to speak my mind and say, hey, that's not what's going on in my life, a lot of things wouldn't have a domino effect, but they had to happen the way they did. Even for me, projecting on another friend in that moment, because I was going through my own inner hurt and not dealing with finance, you know, I had to learn in that moment to trust finance, to trust when I am clear, when I'm a clear vessel, and when I'm a reflection of the universe steps in my favor. So abundance is real, you know. But at the same time, when we deal with our life experiences, when we deal with our lessons, when people come from places of poverty, when people come through certain experience of abuse, there has to be healing and things that a person has to go through to truly understand what abundance is, or what certain things of love, of being able to feel like you're worthy, all these things that come to, which is a birthright for everyone, um but only comes when you're ready to know that you are that. You know, I remember that week I had about $60 in my name. And having children and going through certain things that are hard on the level of you just dealing with worldly things of like, hey, how am I going to get on the bus? Or, hey, how am I going to have the food for my family this week? Certain things that when a person's going through, can be stressful and feel like, wow, you know, is there hope at the end of the tunnel here, right? But when you reflect on your alignment and your trust within yourself, not on an intellectual level, but really bringing that into yourself, things start to shift and change. I'll never forget when I did a healing with this person. I did a healing with this person, right? Give me 1 second. Because I gotta, hold on 1 second, y'all. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. I had to disconnect on there. But on the phone, but within this healing, there was a lot of stuff that happened, but I'll never forget when it was this very ancient being. She was like a grandmother energy. And she said, don't ever worry about finances. You will be provided for. You know? Because, you know, I came up with folk that got the sticky fingers, would go in the store, get what they need and all that. And I'm not going to play innocent like there was in times where I would hit up a store if I needed food or whatever for my family. But what made clear sense to me in that moment is when that goddess energy came through and said, don't worry, you will be provided for. And that came into a level of truly being aligned with yourself. When myself was coming from a place of fear, confusion starts. Lack starts. Not having enough money starts. When there's a level of not being clear within yourself, confusion starts. I don't speak my mind, what's on my heart. No, what you said about me is not true. You know? But I could understand even why that came up. You know? These are lessons that I had to learn. When I had to go on the other side because there was something that I had to learn more about myself. And I'm gonna talk about the Bufo and some of my experiences right now. For those who know about me or have been watching my videos or familiar with some of my work, know that I do a lot of different type of healing work. You know, I started with doing this healing work with over 30 years ago, dealing with Tai Chi and Qigong. You know, and I'm gonna tell you, just keep up with the practice. It's a way of life. It's not something that we get overnight. But the more you practice, the more you learn about how your energy, how to cultivate energy more, how to cultivate the life force more, and what actually happens to a person when they cultivate and pack, for instance, the chi into their danten or their stomach area. What happens when you pack it in the three major areas, energy points within the Taoist Qigong tradition? What happens? How does your mind react to it? How does your physical body react to it? All those things, right? And it's a process. And what you're doing is you're developing and building yourself. This inner alchemy work is truly powerful. And when those brothers and sisters and beings that you not only utilize the energy work from various traditions, but also whatever you gravitate towards, right? And when it becomes a daily practice, when it becomes a way of life, and then you're able to utilize the ethogenic medicines, it's taking things to the next level now. Okay? Baba Kalindi, I seen a post on Facebook yesterday, with the late Baba Kalindi, great elder. And how he was talking about speeding up during this time and what's going on during these times. Some of my comrades, I was like, I agree with a lot of things Baba said, especially along the lines of the ethogenic medicines and how, when used properly, it can bring people to states of not only just healing, but also stepping into a greater reality within yourself, you know? And when we're talking about the times that we're living in and the urgency of doing that type of work, I was telling people all day, like, yeah, the mushrooms, all that's good and all, but it takes a while for some of these things to kick in and to go into your higher states of consciousness. The Bufo, the DMT, these were a certain ethogenic medicines that could bring you directly into these experiences in a matter of seconds. And when used properly, be able to do certain things on a very deep level. Always respected the Toad, but I feel very blessed. A great gift is that this year I was able to get a vape Bufo pen, which allowed me to do the work much easier. You know what I mean? 10 times easier. Because when people look at the level of using Bufo or the Toad medicine, that's 5-MeO DMT, and these are compounds, these are psychoactive compounds that are already in our body, you know? Because again, like I was talking to this elder, his name is Lama Mike Crawley, and he wrote a book about Buddhism and psychedelics. And he was trying to bring forth the idea, not just the idea, but the evidence to show that a lot of these religions, a lot of these even mystical paths have been using ethogenic medicine side by side with their practice. But a lot of times it has been a secret that has been only shared amongst the initiates. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that, one, the level of maturity with an individual, and that can relate to the level of psychosis. That can relate to the level of somebody that's already have certain things that they need to work with, just heighten more. You know what I mean? So that's not going to do good for that individual. You know, if a person's dealing with depression or whatever, there's a lot of things can trigger within a person. That's why some of these medicines weren't for everybody. You know, it was for people going through certain foundational things first, you know, before they can even approach it in a way that's useful to them. Okay. The Bufo vape pen is the lightsaber for this time. And I'm literally speaking to those that are in spiritual, those circles that have been doing this work. That's who I'm talking to right now. It's the lightsaber for those that are doing that type of work on the other side. Okay? I remember when I told a person before, I was like, when there's all this talk about right now about, you know, the drones over New Jersey and all these other things. And again, this is not new to my circle of friends. We've been talking about this stuff since the early 90s, 91, 92, 93. I'm 12, 13 years old, and I have these older, very interesting men and women that free thinkers that were exposing me to some of this information. You know, they made it very aware to me that there's a long legacy of indigenous people that talk about that we're not alone. That is nothing new. This is nothing new. We've been under a certain level of perceiving reality for such a long time that even though it's all in your face, and it has been all in your face over the years, people still can't wrap their head around it. They can't believe it, because when you see reality in a certain way, that's the only way that you see it. You know? So it's like, even myself hearing things at a young age, like, hey, we have a history with intergalactic travel, or human beings have had a history of learning different ways to travel through different dimensions. Most people don't remember that history. Most people, a lot more people are catching up. Don't get me wrong. There is that awakening that's happening. But the era or the yuga or the cycle that we're in, when we look at how conditioned we've been, when the conversation that comes up about extraterrestrials, aliens, any of those type of things, for the longest of time, it always been pushed out of the public view. Or if you're a person that is even open to such phenomena, you're looked at as somebody that's crazy or loony or out there or head in the clouds, or you watch too much sci-fi or what have you. But the reality of the matter is that, if you want to accept it or not, is that all the holy books, even if a person is into religion or not, even have spoke upon this creation beyond just this earthly realm. That there's many mansions in my heaven, right? And there's all these different quotes that are hinting to people that there's life beyond just this earth here. I was reading this book. Big up to my good friend Firewater. He referred me to this book, actually. And I respect a lot of people that speak from experience, that speak from experience, that, we can learn about something, we can study something, but also we're coming from a place that I had this experience. And this experience was there to validate what I've been studying for the longest of time. All right. I can't find the book right now for some reason. But it's a book talking about the ancient monuments in Mexico. All right. And also in Peru. And they talked about the actual, in Peru, how they have the Naka lines, where they have the spider, where they had the monkey, where they had even different type of animals. And basically these things went on for miles. And people that studied the Naka lines, they was like, there's no possible way that the people of that time could create that just from a ground level. You would have to be high in the sky to be able to build something of that magnitude and know what you're seeing to build, to look, how it's going to look from up high. You had to be up high, So back when I was in college in the early 2000s, I had an Indian friend. His name is Hari. And Hari, I remember I was about 21, 22 at the time, 23, around that age. And I remember he was telling me, yeah, Dooley, we always had the ability to have flying vehicles. And I was like, yo, Hari, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah. He said, in my culture in India, he says, we talk about the Vamadas. This is what my friend was telling me at the time. He says, you could read about it, Julie. He says, like, he said, they make us think that we're at our highest pinnacle right now, like we're at the height of technology. But we was talking, having this discussion, showing and sharing with each other that the world in reality goes in cycles upon cycles upon cycles upon cycles. That's why my mom, God bless her, when she was alive, she used to tell us, if you want to learn more about God, Goddess, what have you, she says, study nature. She used to always say that, study nature. She says, look at how the cycles present itself. So we've gone through cycles of ignorance collectively. We've gone through cycles where we've been at this place of more unity and union in knowing the true nature of reality. I tell people all the time, again, I'm into sci-fi, the comic books, all those things, you know what I mean? I think art is a great way to express some of these abstract ideas, you know, in some of this very deep type of knowledge in a very entertaining way, you know? So I remember there's a show on Netflix called Love, Death, and Robots. Okay. And then on that show, they're like 15-minute clips of different stories, right? Talking about futuristic things and robots and all that, and the AI and stuff like that, right? There's a scene in one of the episodes where there's a couple. They open up their freezer. The boyfriend opens up the freezer, and there's a mini world within the freezer. All right. He opens it up, and it looks like early cavemen, you know. And he's like, he's calling his girlfriend, and he's like, what is that? You see that in our freezer? It's like, you know, basically, I know we didn't drink no beers tonight, smoke nothing, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, what the hell is this? You know, they close the freezer. He opens it up again. Now, humanity is at a level of dealing with the Industrial Revolution. So now it's like, okay, wow, they're looking at different levels of building, engineering, all these other things, right? He's like, wow, this is strange. He's looking at his girlfriend, close the freezer. He opens up the freezer again. Now they're dealing with nuclear warfare. It's a big nuclear explosion in the freezer. It almost hits his face to the point where he has a little burn mark on his nose. He's like, oh shit, what the fuck is this? You close the freezer. And then he's looking at his girlfriend. They're both looking at each other like, this is crazy. What the hell is this? They open it up slowly again, because the last time they opened it up, like this big nuclear explosion thing, they're like, we don't know what the hell what we're gonna see this time. They open it up again. It's like galactic celestial consciousness, you know? And they're like, wow. And then they close the freezer again, and they open it up again, and it's back at this caveman era, right? And then the episode ends. So there's cycles of that deals with and interact with our reality, just like we have in nature. This guy right here, Swami Sri Tukteshar. I never pronounce his name right, but very interesting man. And I remember his book that he wrote about, he talked about the cycles, and they're not as long as we think, even in regard to when people refer to the age of iron, or what we call the age of Kali Yuga. one of the most densest ages where men and women are at discord, where there's fighting amongst brother and sister, where there's this level of war, confusion, all these different things. He was saying that that cycle is not as long as a lot of other scholars have said. Sometimes 24,000 years, some say even 100, over 100,000, whatever. He was saying that this was around. Don't mistake my. I hope I don't misquote what the elder was saying, but he was around the 10,000 to 20,000 year type of period. But he says when you leave one cycle, it doesn't just jump into another cycle, all quickly, like, oh, everything is good now, we warring now, all everything is good. He says you have those in between cycles. So, just like spring before we're leaving wintertime, but it's that in between time before it gets hot. You know what I mean? Or autumn, it's that in between time before winter. That gradual period before we start to ascend or come back into collective consciousness again. Okay? So he made that reference to going back to the central sun. And as we go to sleep, going furthest away from the central sun. So I think everything is in alignment right now. And when we talk about the subject of UFOs, for instance, or even what people are saying, drones, these things are all in right on time. It's not like people didn't tell us what was going on beforehand. Even the old school book that many people were reading back in the day, Behold the Pale Horse by William Cooper. He was a person that worked within the US government, and seen various different documents stating like a lot of stuff that we're going through right now, and this was a book that came out in the early 90s, and he was talking about false flags, about different things, false UFO, false alien invasions and all that, to usher in the so-called one world order. My thing is that when a person realized that to be aware of all these things, to be aware of the drones, also to be aware of the re-engineered craft, and also to be aware that we are not alone. When I was looking at that book about the Naka lines in Peru, and when I said that looked nothing but like a basically a road wheel, a landing site for crafts. You know what I mean? It was like, something, but then, and you could even experience something, but then something of the light bulb really goes off in your head. And you say to yourself, well, I'll be damned. We have been interacting with different type of beings. We have been doing space travel for a very long time. It's just that we don't remember it. And the records have been tampered with. The history has been distorted. So it's very interesting that we're at this time. And it makes sense to me. It makes sense because, one, I've had experience with what we would call extraterrestrials. So from my experience and then doing my own research, it makes a lot of sense to me. When a person says that, well, I don't believe in aliens, or I don't believe there's life on other planets or other dimensions and stuff, it's all good for that individual. We're all perceiving our reality from where we're at mentally at the time. But when a person is ready to be able to handle the next level of understanding, then things could be available for their consciousness. It's like, for instance, in Star Trek, I forget which Star Trek it was. It was a scene where this planet was about to have a volcano eruption, and it was going to destroy everybody on that, all the natives on that planet, right? Captain Kirk, and Spock was talking amongst each other in this scene on the movie, and he's like, Captain Kirk's like, we gotta save these people here, these beings here. And Spock is like, no, you can't. Spock is the logical one, right? He doesn't deal with emotions, from his species, So he's like, no, we can't save them. We that's against universal law. That's against the universal protocol that advanced civilization can't interfere with a civilization or a planet that's going through their evolution, right? So what Captain Kirk do? He gets in the Starship Enterprise. He goes in, he puts something on the volcano to stop the volcano, and they fly off from the planet. As the Starship Enterprise is leaving their planet, the natives from that planet see it, right? And what they do, they draw it in sand, the Starship Enterprise, and they start bowing down to it, worshiping it. Worshiping it like it's like there's some gods, right? Which was the mental concept of what Spock was, the character Spock was trying to convey to Captain Kirk. These beings on this planet have no level of understanding this level of technology. So if we expose them to this too early, then that will throw off their whole evolution. That's the same thing if people look into any of studies about any UFOs or UFOlogy or anything. It's the same thing. We have on record former President Eisenhower that interacted with extraterrestrials. There was deals that were made, according to these records, deals of technology, is in exchange for other things, right? And then we could look into what? I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, but also we look at Dr. Stephen Greer, and I came across his information in the early 2000s as well, when he came across with the National Press Club and had all these military men that sworn on oath that they interacted with extraterrestrials, that there was things that they couldn't say on record because their life might have been in danger, or they might have been terminated from their position, their job, or what have you, right? These are old men that are about to be on their deathbed, and for whatever reason, be it their conscience, they want to come forward and say, this is what's going on, And so the information is out there. And for me, what I find interesting is that when I started to have certain interactions with extraterrestrials, I realized that one, there's many different intelligent species of various type of life forms that are dealing with very interesting technology, that are dealing with different philosophies, all kinds of, just like we have art, culture, science, all kinds of things on this planet. There's other civilizations beyond our planet, interdimensionally, that has so much to give. We're talking about a cultural exchange here, an intergalactic exchange here. All right. So for many years of dealing with energy cultivation work, and like I said, when I finally started getting into the ethogenic medicine, it allowed me to have more insight into different things, that to go deeper into the practice that I'm doing. Like, oh, wow, if I move my body this way, or, oh, wow, if I breathe and hold my breath this way, or if I hold the energy in this center this way, it has an effect on the client in this way. Oh, this holding my finger this way will literally pull out cancer. Or doing this way will bring down inflammation, or doing this type of tonation will be able to shift this particular way for this person's consciousness. And it's very, very precise. And it is very much the art of the art form of listening. And that's the whole importance of even why people do even meditation, to be able to quiet their mind so they can receive certain information. When I become disciplined, when I listen on the other side, when I'm experiencing these medicines and I really listen, there is no disconnect with that particular channel. Okay, I'll give you an example. And again, I go along with what Spirit is telling me to do at the moment. All right. Hold on 1 second, please. 1 second. I'll give you an example. I have a good, dear, lovely, beautiful woman in my life right now who I had no idea was coming to me. And we had no idea that we was going to see each other and come across each other's path. I'm so very appreciative of my girlfriend, my partner. There's different levels of relating, you know, and even the thing of love and partnership. Sometimes we can't even really and have it, or somebody that you know what we hear, even soulmates. We even hear just divine partners that supposed to come into my life. Sometimes our lives. Sometimes if we don't deal with our own shit, we're not ready for that type of connection. You know, this goes back to even some of the lessons I had to learn from even that good friend of mine that said some things that hurted my heart at the moment. But I had to examine it, because things don't come on our plate. Where in life did I get in my own way? By not listening. There was moments where I didn't feel worthy of myself. And my actions and behavior showed that. As I reflect on my life more, I've seen there's many women that I could say I have broken their heart, you know, of not being honest, of not being true to myself, of what I wanted in my life, the needs that I even needed. Honesty is important. And even the times where I felt in my life that, because a lot of it, and going into my own inner healing, because even if my sharing, somebody else might be going through something similar thing, and hopefully this can help whoever's listening. And if it's not, then I hope I'm not wasting your time. But I didn't grow up with my moms, you know what I mean? And that itself unconsciously came from a place of me, even unconsciously looking for my mother, even in other women that I was going out with or dating or having a connection with, and unconsciously not even knowing that at the time. My mom was classified as schizophrenic, you know? And as I'm learning more about these labels of even bipolar, schizophrenia, all these other things, and I spoke about this subject in the past as well, that a lot of these particular individuals are usually people that sometimes are tapped into certain levels of reality that most your so-called average person might not be aware of. So if somebody, for instance, say, wow, you know, I can perceive my deceased relative, you know, uncle so-and-so or auntie so-and-so or grandma so-and-so who passed away, I see them ever so often, Or that person might say, wow, I'm able to hear them speaking to me telepathically or what have you. Because we deal with such a very physical society, very materialistic society, we don't make room for modern day academia to have room for that type of conversation. Because we deal with a very physical reality society. A lot of Western thinking is that it's just this physical body. Or when you die, you hit the grave and that's it. Oh, you're talking about interacting with somebody that passed away or deceased. You're having a hallucination. Even when some people that say that people that take ethogenic medicines or psychedelics, oh, you're having a hallucination. No, there are some people out there that, yes, might be chemically imbalanced and might have some real serious issues. And then there are some people out there that are literally tapped in. And just because that person does not have the spiritual insight or the inner vision to see that deceased spirit sitting on your couch, for instance, doesn't mean that that's not going on. My mother used to say very, very profound things that came out of her mouth that I knew as even a child that this woman was channeling information from some other type of source. And I also knew when my mother was off-centered and had negative energy streaming through her to the point that her eyes did not look the same physically. Her voice would change, different things. And a lot of those things were traumatic for me as a child, as a little young boy. And even my sisters. And I'm learning more about that even with one of my older sisters, where me and her are living together for the first time. So we're even doing healing amongst each other as siblings because of different things that we went through growing up. So when I see that those type of things that were going on, one, it set it the stage for me to be able to look in what makes a person sick, having a curiosity from those experiences as a young boy to later as an adult to look into things about spirits and other things of that nature, because I wanted to understand or have a better understanding of what my mother went through. It set up a level of interest because of some of the traumatic things that I went through. So I learned not everything is a hallucination, that there is different dimensions and even quantum physics. Not that we have to lean on that as a verification, but since people live in a society where they judge a person's knowledge usually on degrees or what college we went through, or he's a doctor or she's a doctor of this and that, for some reason, these type of things give a place of saying, well, we can verify that now because it went through the so-called experts, right? Now, this is what even Baba Kalindi was trying to bring to the masses. He's like, he would go to these psychedelic conferences and say, hey, we have enough of scientists and experts and stuff, but how many of you are actually taking the ethogenic medicines? How many of y'all are actually taking the psychedelics? Now, not microdosing, but going in, as Kalindi would say, to go deep, and to see where those two worlds bridge together, because those people do have an important part to play. When a scientist can be able to study things like, even the guy that came up with he had the the Nobel Peace Prize or whatever for the discovery of how the DNA goes into a spiral and all that. I forget the brother's name, but Baba Kalindi even talked about him and said that he came up with that discovery through being on a psychedelic. Now, I'm not saying a person has to be engaged in the medicine to have these discoveries. I'm not saying that, because reality is very vast and there's so many ways to get there. Because I could tell you about some personal experiences I had recently dealing with Kriya Yoga, just dealing with Kriya Yoga. And some of the first 8 exercises that they give you just to activate your Jed pillar, to activate your cerebral spinal fluid, to bring some of that energy directly into your brain. There's experiences that I've had just doing the meditations that are just as profound or even more than me sitting down with some of the deepest psychedelics that I've done sometime. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to brag or to make myself look like I'm more different or better than the next person. No, like I said, it's a birthright to everyone. The blueprint is right there. It's just literally just doing the work. And the more I even, for instance, when I am disciplined and I do, for instance, my Kriya Yoga and these exercises, the level of mental clarity, peace, being able to feel grounded, to be able to go through my day more effectively is amazing. And I see the difference. I see the difference. So it is about doing the work. And some days, yeah, you're going to goof off. Some days you're going to fuck up. Some days you're going to get the lessons. And some days you have to learn about forgiveness. Especially what I've been learning about on the other side with the Bufo. To know that when we talk about hallucination, when we talk about the tradition of shamanism, for instance, and we already know, I don't want to get into the so-called details. I'm just going into, let's just go right in. We could talk about, some people want to get deep into the wordings and different things like that, right? So we can go into, well, shamanism is dealing with the people of Siberia and the ones that have that tradition over there. We understand that every medicine man, every medicine woman had their own unique name from their cultural perspective. But essentially, what I'm talking about are masters of trance, masters of trance, masters of trance. Those who are able to have literally 1 foot in this dimension and 1 foot in various other dimensions simultaneously. We are truly talking about, if we want to give a reference through popular media or whatever, or film, we definitely can make a reference to the movie Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, of being able to step in various different dimensional realities and still be conscious of this particular reality at the same time. Masters of trance. In that sense, there is no level of hallucination because we should be able to verify your experiences. When, for instance, you come back with certain information that could be verified, then we're talking about actually tapping into something that's authentic. Okay? Not hallucination. I'll give you an example. When one of my good friends, for instance, was sitting with the medicine of the Iboga, and Iboga It's a medicine from Africa, from that deal with the Betwi tradition. And it's a medicine that's been known to help a lot of people deal with addiction, be it dealing with pills, heroin, crack, you name it, whatever. To also not only just drug substance abuse, but also mental addictions, the addictions of certain mindsets, certain ways of thinking. So there's been a lot of success with people that sit with that medicine, and somebody that been stealing your this relative that goes, you can't, everybody got to put their purse or wallet away, or when this uncle or aunt or whoever comes through because they're dealing with addiction. One day after sitting with this medicine, have a very deep insight for them to give up that addiction, to give up that drug, to let go of that particular negative thought pattern that's been torturing them and tormenting them for so many years. Okay? Now, I'll tell a person like always, if there was a magic pill that we all could take, then the whole world would have been enlightened by now. Right? I'm not saying that, because one person's experience with iboga, for instance, could be totally different than to the next person, depending on their level of maturity, depending on their level of spiritual insight within themselves, and all these different things. Right? Some person might be able to have that iboga experience and have such a ground-shaking, earth-shaking to their core experience that they got it right there and they don't need to go back to that medicine ever again. All right? There might be some people that they have to do more foundational work, where they have to maybe look at their inner demons more. Might have to come back to that medicine several times while doing their inner work off the medicine, because you are the medicine, as many people would say. Doing your integration work, being disciplined with your lifestyle to bring forth true, authentic healing for yourself. So for the next person, it might be different. But what I do want to make an example of that is that I had a very good friend of mine, and I'm talking about bringing back authentic experiences, information, not hallucination. Things we can verify, things that we're not saying is just not your so-called subjective reality, but we're bringing this into something that we all can bring back and verify and work for even others. When my good friend said that he took the iboga and his subconscious sprung up like a computer where he had different screens that were open, and he were able to touch like one screen, like you might see, for instance, referencing popular media again, films and things. If somebody remembers, like, for instance, Iron Man, the Iron Man movie or whatever, and you have Tony Stark, he has his high-tech computer and there's like a hologram that pops up and he's able to interact with the hologram or whatever, right? That's the same thing experience that my good friend was describing to me within his iboga experience, where this level of an inner hologram that was able to pop up in his subconscious, in his conscious mind. And he was able to press on certain aspects that represented different aspects and timelines within his life. He was able to upload certain ones for memory. He was able to delete certain files to say, hey, that experience, I don't need that anymore. That experience is no longer serving me anymore. So imagine that you're deleting files within your conscious mind. So therefore, you're deleting the file of this particular, I don't know, trauma, what have you, which led to the level of addiction. And I'm going to talk about that because everything affects everything, right? So I want to even talk about the level of pain in certain trauma. And I'm going to go back to that. So as he's having this experience, he's able to talk to his great, great, great grandfather. And he was able to get information from that particular ancestor, who is deceased, by the way. And this friend of mine was able to bring back that information from his great, great, great grandfather. And he was able to talk to his mother and his aunt about that great grandfather. And he knew his name, and they were blown away. They didn't know what to do with their son at that moment because no one knew about this great, great, great grandfather, and no one talked about him. So they're saying, how did you, first of all, know his name? How did you know this information? Who told you this? You know, but the level of curiosity, and also they couldn't notice that he looked much younger after having this iboga experience. His demeanor, his attitude, everything was more upbeat. He seemed like he was just much more at peace with himself. So one thing about family and friends, you might have some family members might say what you're getting into or what you're exploring, or you have an interest in this philosophy, or you're looking into this ancient part of history, or you might even want to sit down with a mushroom and they might say, man, this mother effer is out of his mind or her mind. You know, like, you know, you're the so-called black sheep of the family or what have you, right? And they might clown you for that. They might ridicule you for that. They might say, hey, you know, you're wasting your time exploring that, or you're going to go crazy, or better yet, you're going to be dealing with some devils, or you know, that's going to lead you into some negative stuff. You know, they'll throw anything on your plate, right? But one thing that they might see a reaction from these family members when they start to see the positive change in a person. Like I said, the uncle that would come, everybody would have to put their purse away or hide their wallet, or like put, you know, make sure the jewelry that they put up is, you know, tucked away in the drawer, because they don't want that uncle to be trying to steal that to get another fix to deal with his addiction. One day that uncle comes in and he's not all looking around. He's not trying to scope out your apartment to see what he can find. He's actually sitting on your couch, and not only that he came in and sat on your couch, he brought you some food, something he never done, or some flowers. And next thing you know, he's sitting down and being attentive with you, actually listening to you. There's a level of curiosity that starts to come up, because that person now is saying, hold on, that's not Uncle so-and-so. He usually don't move like that. What's going on with him? What is he doing? What is he or she doing in his life to make this type of change? There's some changes going on with my uncle. Never did that. When you had to tuck away this purse or whatever, every time this Negro would come around, you know? So the curiosity will come in the change, and sometimes you don't have to proselytize or throw something down somebody's throat. And that's usually the beginning stages of someone who's really starting to get to know themselves more, right? Or what we would call waking up from the matrix or what have you, right? Is that part of you that, oh, wow, I'm starting to get it. Then everybody got to get it. Like, I know, I'm the one that know. Listen to me, you know what I mean? You don't got to do nothing but be yourself. You know, it's deep. There are certain masters where their auric fields expands, their energy field expands so far. They cultivated their energy so much that their energy expands out for miles. And sometimes they don't have to do anything. Just being in the person's presence makes change. Now, I'll give you an example. And there's some things I have to go back to, I know, especially with the healing and the Bufo. I'm gonna go back to that, and even the pain in the body, connected to certain things. This is a good book. I've been reading this book a lot lately. I've been taking my time with it because it's a lot of gems. It's a lot of gems in it, a lot of jewels in it. Paramhansa Yogananda, with Personal Reflections, a biography by Swami Kriyananda. Okay? Now, I've been in a lot of different schools of thought. And a lot of the different schools of thought I've been in, they've all helped me in different ways for the time that I needed. And not to say that I don't still apply these things into my life. I do. The Tai Chi, certain movement stance, certain mantras, certain things that I do on a regular, even certain Reiki things that I've learned over the years. But something when I was in North Carolina, and it was a friend of mine that brought to my attention that they was going to do an initiation into the Kriya Yoga path. For something in me, I felt like I needed to be there and to experience that initiation. It was one of the best life choices I could have made in a very long time. In a very long time. Not to say things haven't come up in my life and challenges and different things and goof ups and all that. Yes, they have. But I've been coming back, learning from those experiences in a very different way. Things that I normally would dwell on or hold on to, or, I'm like, okay, nah, let's look at the bigger picture here, And when we even talk about healings or even things of dealing with, if you had a big brother, for instance, or a big sister, right? Like, for instance, well, I'm going to try to bring it to a very simple form, right? Maybe you might go to this school and you have these at the school. We'll reflect on our childhood or something, right? Not to say this is everyone's experience. It's not even my experience, but I'm just trying to throw an example out, right? Say, for instance, a young child is going to school and this child or the young person is dealing with a bully, right? This bully, a lot of people fear this bully. The bully's taking the person's school lunch, is tripping them when they put their leg out, tripping them when the person is walking down the school hall or whatever, right? To the point that this young person does not want to go to school. They say, this person is tormenting me. This motherfucker is just a badass motherfucker, right? All of a sudden, for instance, you all of a sudden you have a comrade. You have someone that actually got your back and says, yo, you know what? Next time that person tries that, I got you. Ain't gonna go down like that. That's what some of these spiritual masters are. All right. Yes, it's not enabling a person. It's not saying I'm gonna hold your hand through every situation that you're going through in life, because these things that come up in life is to teach us about how to stand up for ourselves, to speak up, to be truthful with yourself, to learn how to forgive yourself, learning how to be accountable for yourself, all these different things. And if there's no movement, there's no action, And this is what even this book goes into in the level of what we call Maya, or in India, what we call illusion. Or even if we want to come from an organized religion and say the shadow aspect of yourself, or the so-called devil, or whatever. Oh, I got to go at the end of this. Oh, brilliant writing, right? There has to be movement for something to grow, you know? But when the elders used to tell me, yeah, you got to have a teacher. And we always will have a teacher, believe it or not. Even if it's a physical teacher, a spiritual teacher on the other side, and I don't care if the teacher is an aunt, a bully, a kid walking down the street, there's insight to happen if you, as they say, if you have ears to hear and eyes to see. When you have somebody that traversed the spirit plane and have done a lot of work, an OG in the game, when it comes to certain things of having that person as an ally is deep. When I started going in after this initiation and started, first of all, when I went back into doing my psychic surgeries, the whole psychic surgeries were different after I took the initiation into the Kriya path. Before, for instance, I might have taken 3 puffs of Shanga to go into full singularity consciousness and deal with the level of healing through that mindset. Would 3 puffs would be too much? Total oblivion. And now I'm going through this whole thing, and I got to wait maybe 5 minutes until I'm more centered in myself to be able to do the work with the client at that moment. I had to learn that, wow, I might just need 1 or 1.5 puffs right now of that medicine to go into my higher consciousness state, because my frequency is different. There's an upgrade that happened through the initiation, through the Kriya Yoga in that instance. You know, so when we look at different allies, when we look at people who've done the work and they are now they are there to help you in your journey, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. I'm talking about certain sessions where I'm dealing with the medicine, and usually I have my own spirit guides, my ancestors or whoever, or even in certain situations with the client I'm working with, their guides or their ancestors or their spiritual teachers, what have you, will show up in the room and give assistance, right? After our Kriya Yoga initiation, these yogis started showing themselves in the sessions. Yogananda, this brother here, you know what I mean? And these guys are funny as anything, because sometimes we forget that the all consciousness has a sense of humor as well. You know, shit, invented humor. You know what I mean? All these different aspects of ourselves. You know, and sometimes when people look at spirituality or even look at that word, they have this view of this is how it's supposed to look like. And sometimes if we get caught up in that, then we can miss the whole thing. There's a character in this book, and I don't know, I'm about to get to it in a second, where he looks like a homeless man. And the main character don't even know who this man is on the other side. But he always go around in the park with the shopping cart smelling like shit. And sometimes so-called seem to be babbling to himself. And to the character, he pisses on his shoe. He's like, what the fuck? Who the fuck is this guy? Not really knowing who he really is. What I've learned recently, big time, with the Bufo or the Toad, When a person goes into that singularity consciousness, when I was going into the singularity consciousness these past couple of weeks, there was this level, there was this undeniable connection of everything. And within that connection, the level of bliss, the level, I can't say the word love, because when we look at certain words to describe the undescribable, when we use certain vocabulary to describe certain things that go beyond the everyday experience, it limits the experience itself. So the only thing I could say, a level of equilibrium and bliss. And when I say there's the level of being everyone, stepping into somebody else's consciousness, because what is the identity anyway? And seeing things through other people's eyes, other people's consciousness, being able to truly come from a place of saying, I do not have the right to judge. I could say that I don't like something, but not being able to judge, because coming from that level of consciousness and seeing everything is tied together and serves a purpose, you start to look at things from a very different perspective. When we look at singularity consciousness, it's not to say that there is not an individual, or that if we want to use the word God, that God cannot look or pierce through the perception of an individual. That's not true. It's to understand from the biggest level of consciousness is that there is no disconnect. If we want to talk about even Tibetan Buddhism, for instance, they have this concept of form is emptiness and emptiness is form. To say that there is a perception that I'm an individual, that this drawer right here is an inanimate object, that it's something that's sitting right, that's, that's laying right next to me. When we can come from concepts, we can intellectualize things, but I'm going to tell you, there's nothing in this world like your own personal experience. And no one can take that away from you. When I say that, wow, form is emptiness and emptiness is form, and what we talk about emptiness coming from the level of even scientists trying to understand this, of saying like, wow, everything in existence is vibrating at a particular frequency, and in all actuality, everything on the underlying current of reality is energy pulsating at a particular frequency. And we could look at somatics, we could look at so many different examples, fractals, we could look at so many things that even from a scientific point of view is aiming at the same language, aiming at the same idea, coming to the same conclusion, but maybe using certain different language or terms, but we're speaking upon the same thing. When I say the level of humbleness, forgiveness, and then having to remind myself, don't forget, as I'm coming back into this little vessel, this thing that we call a human being, don't forget. Hold that awareness, hold that level of connection, Because when you do, you're going to walk through life in a different way. I'm going to go to the book, but I have to go into briefly about this healing I did with my lady, my partner, my love. My partner, she has sometimes very foot pain, right? She sometimes experiences pain in her feet. And it's because she considers herself to be more flat foot, all right? Doesn't have so much arch, so much in her feet. And not even that. What I learned on the other side is that the pain was also coming from a place of all the critics, all the people that had negative opinions in different things that they were trying to place of their idea of what's attractive or beautiful on how a woman's feet supposed to look like. They tried to put that level of shame in her mind. So these were things that had to be cleared because this related also to the pain in her feet. So I remember that early rising, I'm laying in the bed with her and I just started just rubbing her feet, right? Next thing, and this goes into the level of listening. All right. And there's certain groups of people that I'm talking to when I'm using certain language. All right. I'm speaking to my healing friends. I'm talking to the practitioners out there that have an interest in healing, that use different modalities in the level of healing. Because it's not just one way. And the beautiful thing about when you start to travel your consciousness, when your consciousness starts to have interdimensional travel, when you start to traverse the multiverse and you start to interact with different levels of consciousness, you start to see that there's a variety of different ways of approaching healing. And the beautiful thing, if you can imagine, you going to a classroom, and you're sitting with a professor, all right? You're sitting with a professor that might be over here in this particular dimension or this particular constellation, and you're having an interaction with that particular being. And you are communicating with that being via telepathy. And you're able to have downloads, you're able to have certain formulas, certain equations, certain ways of bringing forth information here in real time to be able to help a person. It's amazing. I'll give you an example. One time I was working with this client, this brother. He's from the Dominican Republic, right? And at one point in the healing, again, listening, his guides were like, whistle. Start whistling in certain parts of his body. So I go along with the message that's coming through to my consciousness. So I start doing a particular tonation, and it was a particular tonation of the whistling that was coming through. And if it told me at his chest and start whistling there, that's what I would do. If it says, hey, to the right side of his head, there's some stuff going on in his brain that needs to be readjusted or whatever, whistle right there. What was so interesting is at the end of the healing session, the man was like, wow. He was like, it was so interesting that you were whistling in my session. He says, he said, I don't know why you decided to do that, but it made so much sense. And thank you for that. Because he was saying that within the place that he lived in DR, they had this whole whistling tradition that him and his family passed on with each other. So it was a certain whistle that was for his uncle. There was a certain whistle that just was for him and his aunt, whatever. And this was a tradition that they did that was passed down through his particular bloodline. And that's what he needed to be able to release certain things that he was going through in that moment. And that again came to what was coming through at that moment. This is the message. This is what they want me to do. This, I'm going to listen because this is what's coming to my consciousness. Now, again, sometimes there's a lot of fear that comes along the line of doing this type of healing work, especially when you start first beginning. This is now another audience I'm talking to. For the beginners, those that are just coming into this type of work. And that goes into the level of learning how to have discernment, learn how to listen with discernment, learning how to recognize certain vibrational frequencies, certain levels of consciousness. Because there's certain beings that will try to pose itself and disguise itself, will disguise itself and have other intentions, ulterior motives. You might have what we call the cloakers, those who cloak themselves so you can't see who they truly are. Okay? And this goes along the lines of parasitic energy, parasites within themselves. When you look at even certain medicines, for instance, like Combo, for instance, and when you look at the level of how physical parasites are the dictators of most of our thinking, it's ridiculous. So people are not being able to govern their own physical vessel. It's the invasion of the body snatchers, and you have parasites in other consciousnesses that are making decisions for a person. I'm going over here. I have this urge to eat this donut, or this other thing right here, or this, or eat, or entertain this type of level of thinking right now. Because there's things that feed off of different beings. there's different things that feed and live off people's life force. All right, in their physical body. All right. And some people have an awesome hotel. And these parasites are like, man, I love this body. You know what I mean? I send this signal to this brain, and this guy goes right to store 24 and gets whatever I'm bringing the urge for him or her to do. You know? So when we look at cloakers, right? I remember, I'll never forget, there was a being that was trying to cloak itself to make it look like it was a helper. And I was like, hold on, wait a minute. Something is not right with this energetic signature here. And as I put more energy in and opened up that veil, I realized that, no, you was posing as a helper, and you're here just to try to live on by all means to still hang on to this vessel. It gets deep. So for the beginners, it's the level of learning the art of listening and the art of learning discernment and the art of listening to your intuition, your higher aspect of yourself. Just like somebody say, could be a level of life or death. And somebody say, don't go down that street. There might something be telling you, do not go down that street. And your ass didn't listen. And then there's something very terrible that happened to you. You hear about that over and over again. And it's not like there wasn't a part of yourself that wasn't being forewarned. You just didn't want to listen. There might even be messengers coming to you saying like your mother or your aunt or somebody be like, hey, don't hang out with that person. That person doesn't have your best intentions. Oh, nah, he's cool as anything. We go way back. You know what I mean? Nah. That person that had more life experience, had more wisdom, seen something that you couldn't see at that time because you wasn't listening to your own inner wisdom. You weren't aligned at that moment. And this goes back to even pain, even physical pain, mental pain, spiritual, all that pain. For the longest time, I had pain on my right side near my rib, all the way up near my spine. And it wasn't pronounced. It wasn't like something that was showing itself every moment. But if there was certain ways that I would stretch or move my body, I know it would be there. Now, when I sat with the toad one night, and this goes into the level of what we call time travel. We're not talking about the Philadelphia experiment. We're not talking about Montauk Project. We're not talking about anything coming from a so-called physical machine, the one, you know, that have you physically time travel from one timeline or one time period to another. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about using our consciousness as a tool for time travel. When I was sitting with the medicine and I was able to look through my father's eyes as a young boy, he had to be about 3 or 4 years old at that time. And being able to see the inner conflict that was happening to my father as a child in regard to my grandfather, there was this innate feeling within my father as a child, looking through his eyes, as a level of not being accepted by his father, my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran. All right. That feeling started to grow in my father as a wound of some sort towards his father. Not pronounced, not to the point that it was overbearing, but still in there, in my father's being, as a level of starting from not feeling accepted and also shame. The healing that I had to see and witness on the other side between my father and my grandfather, and even at one point going into the shame that was going in through my grandfather and some of the things that he went through as a war veteran. And being able to be like, if the only way I can explain it is like someone having a projector and you're seeing a person's life story or situations go in front of your consciousness in a rapid manner. So seeing their young days to their 20s to their 30s, all that in a matter of so many seconds, right? To the point of not seeing things that my grandfather was going through, my father, and then jumping into the so-called future and seeing things that my son would be going through in his 20s. And the crazy thing about this whole thing is that as I'm witnessing this, I was able to bring healing energy into these individuals. And as the healing went from my grandfather to my father and jumping into me, going to my son, had a ripple effect, to the point that as I'm going through this, seeing this, in the spirit realm, seeing this in my consciousness, my body is responding to it. So automatically my body intuitively and spontaneously starts moving in certain ways to the point that I feel literally this pain leave my right side. Like I was saying, this pain that I've been holding on to for a long time. Now, me thinking maybe it was an injury, my earth self looking at it from in the past of like, oh, maybe this was an injury that I did, maybe doing something or maybe whatever that's causing this pain. When I'm able to see where the pain came from in real time, just being open to the medicine to be able to do work on an ancestral level had a trickle down effect to my physical body right now and bringing comfort. It was amazing. I woke up, I started doing stretches the next day. I was like, yo, I couldn't do this. And I have this level of pain in this area before like that yesterday. That's how different it was. You know what I mean? So this goes along to the art of listening, right? The art of listening. It came to that level even with my girlfriend. One day, like I said, I was working on her feet. Now I know this is not, was it TMI? Too much info, too much info, TMI, whatever. This is not too much. This is not too much TMI. All right. I asked my partner if I can share this with the family before I was even going to share this with you, and she said, "Yeah, sure." All right. So basically, as I'm listening to the healing for her feet, something tells me start nibbling on her feet. All right. So as I'm nibbling on her feet, I feel, and just bear with me, y'all. And of course, at first she's laughing and giggling because it's tickling her feet and stuff, right? But I'm like, nah. I'm telling her, I was like, nah, something's coming through. Just like it's a channel coming through. Let me just do this real quick. And she's like, all right, cool. So she calmed down. And it was like, when you look at like a lot of Native Americans, right? They talk a lot about totems, totem animals, right? And they might say, well, this animal might have came, this bird might have flew over you one day, or you might have seen this other animal, this bunny or whatever, you know, just you walking down the street and you see this particular animal run across your path, right? Native American would say this is the totem animal, and that these totem animals are trying to communicate something to your higher self, to your higher aspect of yourself, how the multiverse, how your universal self is interacting with this human part of yourself, right? So I started to see a beaver in my mind's eye and a squirrel. All right. Right. So I'm doing this nibbling. And oh, by the way, I'm in with the Bufo medicine at this point, right? Because at first it was just like just me breathing and stuff and having a level of trance coming over me and coming in with the channel. Then I was like, then spirit was like, not gotta go deeper to really go into deep to deal with this healing for this woman's feet. So what spirit says, I was like, okay, let me go in deep with the toad. So I'm going in deep. I started seeing in my inner eye, squirrel and beaver. So it's like literally the spirit of this beaver is working through me, even as I'm nibbling on her heel, on her different parts of her feet. And as I'm doing this, it feels like the bunion or the callus is coming down. Right. And then at certain points, it'll tell me to stop. and use my saliva as a way of healing as well for the foot, the way at that point where the way I'm actually massaging her foot, right? Now, here's a little something about the saliva and how brilliant our bodies are and how magnificent we're like, we can't take for granted these human vessels. Like some people like, and this is what's even brought in this book to this comic, I'm gonna get to it, is saying it's like we need both. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna get, and meaning that physical, non-physical, we need both. You know, emptiness is form and form is emptiness. Okay. This vessel, this physical vessel, is brilliant technology. All right. We don't even know half, or we're not even skimming the surface of what we are and what this vessel is capable of doing, right? And that's real talk, right? Saliva, I learned that back when I was studying, when I first started getting into Tai Chi and Qigong, was with my first teacher. His name was Master Heej Robinson. Funny enough, what's so interesting about Master Heej, and I seen him not that long ago, and he's in his 80s now, and he still teaches 2 classes every day and looks excellent for his age. He's doing great, and that's what the level of Tai Chi and Qigong or any internal practice, Shen Yi, Bagua, any of these internalized Kriya Yoga, any of these internalized practices, what they're used for is inner alchemy. So it is like the wine over time. As it gets older, it becomes more fine with age. There's a different level of aging when we look at internal practices. Is different. Even this man Yogananda, even different ways that we transition. When he transitioned, for several weeks, his body did not decay, did not smell. Actually, they actually smelled pleasant smells around his deceased body. And that all was a verification for his internal practices that he was doing over the years. And of course, we know about the rainbow body technique. You know, big up to one of my good friends who gave me an actual book on some of the ancient exercises to activate that rainbow body. And they had one of the masters that turned his body into light. This is during the 1980s, amongst many people, even some of the communists that would, that took over China at that time. He was a Taoist master. And after his body went to light, it shot right up and went right into the sun, right? But there's different levels to show and prove if somebody is actually attaining self-realization or attaining certain things from their daily practice, all right? They're bringing something back, basically, right? So, one second. So when we look at saliva, and even my old teacher, Master Heej Robinson, he was a Vietnam War veteran who came back with post-traumatic stress disorder and Agent Orange and cured himself through the art of the Tai Chi and Qigong. He told us about saliva. When I first was studying with the elder, I remember one day he says, we used to do an exercise where you would rotate your tongue over your teeth and behind your teeth, clockwise, counterclockwise. In Taoist cultivation exercises, they use 9, the level of 9. 9 times, 18 times, 27 times, 36 times. There's the science of 9, that they utilize when you're doing any of these internalized practices. And you can ask anybody that's been in the Qigong Tai Chi circles for years, they'll tell you the same thing. All right. But we would do that. Then we would swish back the saliva back and forth, because what we was doing in that particular exercise is that we were infusing our life force energy with the saliva. All right. And then we would have to swallow it in 3 increments, little first, a little more, and then finally the rest, and would go through your system. And I remember Master He used to tell us that the greatest medicine in our body is not any particular herb that you'll find in the jungle or the forest or what have you, even though these herbs are provided for the healing of nations, right? But he says the greatest medicine that you have is your own saliva. This is what the elder taught us. And there was certain ways that you would infuse your saliva with the life force energy. And as you would swallow it, it would go to certain organs. It would deal with your blood, so many different things as a way for your own inner alchemy practice, your own inner healing practice. So going back to my lady, as first, when the squirrel beaver type of totem energy come through, and it's the nibbling on her feet, then it was the manifestation of the saliva. And the saliva, because it was infused with so much chi at that time, it had healing properties and effects than any great ointment, the greatest oils or ointments that you could ever put on somebody's feet while they're massaging, because now we're talking about chi infused saliva. Okay. If I could tell you that I could see the inflammation coming out of her feet, like you can imagine somebody like old school, like you're playing with some Play-Doh or whatever. It's like, okay, I'm shaping this foot at this moment. The inflammation's coming down. The callus is coming down, right? So that, again, the art of trance, right? So again, it's this place of listening. It's at this place of, even at that moment, me getting channels and downloading of information, but at the same time, still being aware of my human self and having that curiosity coming up at that very moment of like, wow, this is actually working. What the hell is this? You know what I mean? This is deep. And before I end with talking about her healing, I remember at the end of the session, we was like, I was like, yo, babe, look up the totem meaning of squirrel and beaver, and everything that it was talking about within those 2 totem animals were things that she was going through. So that was like, wow, okay, that's in alignment, and that's just one channel. And then it was another, and then there was several other channels that came through afterwards. And I consider, when I say channel, these are nothing but teachers. Okay, you're interacting like, okay, we have the internet, right? At one point in time, we didn't have the internet. At one point in time, in a certain time in history, people were just using more phones or even beepers. Even before that, okay, we're dealing with mail. I have to write you a letter or whatever. These different levels of communication, and the more dense and ingrained that we got from our innate inner technology, that then we had to rely on all these physical things, right? But when you learn how to traverse your consciousness through different dimensions and do dimensional travel, now you have access to different classrooms, different teachers. Now you're dealing with somebody who's a doctor from Sirius or Orion or wherever, and they specialize in their field. And some of the times of spending with these particular consciousness, it's very diverse. You know what I mean? So do you have certain beings that, okay, we apply, when we look at physical healing or mental healing or what have you, where we apply a lot of usage of sound, certain tonations, light, certain lights, You know what I mean? And you could see how they've been using that particular method for so many years or whatever, and they utilize that on their level of their planet or wherever their existence is for things that are in disharmony or disease or different things of that nature. And when I'm learning about their ways and I'm doing my interdimensional travel, and I'm like, wow, I'm like in a classroom in real time interacting with this consciousness over here while I'm sitting in the physical, in this 3D, this third dimension, with this person right here, this client, and I'm learning things simultaneously. So in the moment as I'm learning on the other side and getting the channel, I'm opening myself to be able to apply what is being taught at that moment. You know, so at that moment, after the beaver squirrel energy, there was a level of consciousness that was dealing with light. And at that moment, it was like, if you want to see like your modern day physical equipment here, x-ray, whatever so-called primitive, and not to downgrade our technology, but when you look at other civilizations that deal with technology that might be, I don't know, millions, billions, trillions of years ahead of where we're at currently in our evolution, then it looks like child's play down here. And a lot of time, and it's not to this, it's not to throw shade or anything. It is what it is. When you look at the level of advancements, it's like, whoa, oh wow, this is interesting. We're gonna get there too. We're gonna do that too. Wow, this is deep. You know, so when that was applied, it was like a high-tech level of light technology, a realigning her bones into placement in her foot. I'm literally feeling it shift, okay? In real time, okay? And yes, some of them look different. Yes, there was ones, and I find that was so very interesting because there was one group of beings that were aquatic, all right? And her daughter, why is it universe is so deep? Why did my girlfriend's daughter want to play Avatar, the second one, with the blue people on from that movie? And part of that movie is dealing with the aquatic type of race over there, right? So it was like these reminders that the universe is trying to tell you, like, you're on point. You're not imagining this. You're definitely tapped in. This is happening in real time. And to see them, like we talk about, there's a lot of people that study UFOlogy, right? And you might hear about people that talk about different species, different UFO species, different galactic families, all these things. People might have studied things and say, oh, the Galactic Federation, all these different titles and different things. But to me, it doesn't mean anything unless a person has experience. I'm not going to throw it away and say it has no value, but then there's a lot of things that are just that just are disinformation as well, just to throw a person off, But when you have your own experience, it's like, wow, okay, wow, I literally like seeing this being like somebody sitting across from me. And when we look at different words, and we might hear like reptilian, gray, Pleiadian, this one, that one, you know what I mean? It could become pseudoscience. It could become fantasy. It could be even a person saying that's damn fucking a hallucination. Unless, again, someone has an authentic experience that we could look at and say, wow, okay, that's just not being thrown out there for no reason. There's some truth to it. Now, the ones that I seen, these aquatic beings, they were benevolent. They didn't come off at all as a war raging species of people or beings. And now I have enough of common sense to know that, yes, there's different life forms. Like, it's like somebody saying, well, oh, okay, all these so-called black people are like this, or they all look the same like this. It just don't add up. And that's the same thing when we even do interdimensional travel. And I mean, this is things that even the late Baba Kalindi would talk about as well, because he had these experiences. You know, when you talk about the different species, different beings, even certain beings that Baba Kalindi he had to battle with. And I had those experiences as well. So I know the elder is talking the truth. Not all of them. When I came across the aquatic ones, I had to come to the realization, yeah, there are some negative ones, and there have been healings where they are very parasitic. You know what I mean? But again, couldn't these earthlings, us people here, be very parasitic the way we live our lives, some of us, on daily basis? So what's the difference? Consciousness. You know, you could have a group of people that are very known culturally for certain things. You know, even so-called stereotypes don't come out of nowhere sometimes. You know what I mean? But at the same time, they came through as a channel as well. And they were coming from their level of dealing with not only alignment, because it was the energy of light first that came with the alignment of her skeleton structure. Then after that, the aquatic, it was like it was coming from a level of doing certain things with her muscle, and also dealing with the callus as well, applying that, going back into smoothing that out. It was very interesting. And then after that, it was another channel. And that channel was comedic. You know what I mean? So at that moment, it was like face over here. It was very mathematical. Face at this angle over here. She has to lie on the bed facing that way towards the sun. Her foot must be at this position. All that very, very scientific, very technical, very much to the T at very certain angles to allow certain frequencies to go through her body. And that's when that was coming up at that moment as a level at that time of dealing with thought patterns, of dealing with certain ideas of self-imagery, of dealing with even levels of what, even if you want to say it, negative suggestion. Bring in certain ideas of this is what beauty is supposed to look like, or, you know, your feet aren't attractive, or this and that. And that's where that stream of energy had to come through to let go of the thought forms, to let go of your own inner prejudice towards your own self, which will have a effect on your physical body. All right. In the manifestation of pain. Okay. So now, end result, because I didn't mean to go in that deep with that, but I think is coming out for a reason, even if this is going to reach, again, my healing family. You know what I mean? So the future healers, to know that when they go through this experience with the medicine, certain things, that these are things that they can has as a verification to say, oh, wow, okay, now I'm not out of my mind. Wow. I heard that before. And this, like, you know, okay, I can understand where this is coming from. It's like, for instance, I just seen that anime. I think it was Gentry versus the Underworld. It's on Netflix. Very interesting animation. And it was my girlfriend's younger son that put me onto it, because some of these animations and stuff, they drop, as you know, they're putting in there's an art form into being able to slip in certain metaphysical realities, truths, different things that you could put and relate to in a very entertaining way. And this cartoon was dropping some things. All right. It talked a lot about Taoist magic in there. It talked about talismans. It talked about opening portals. It talked about how even certain spirits, even after they die, can die. You know what I mean? Which, if that makes sense. Um, but also they talked about energy channels, and it could be the most littlest thing. You might ask yourself, why am I watching this? What do I supposed to get out of this? What's the lesson? There was a moment where there was this one particular lower dimensional being, or what we would call a demon or whatever, and basically he was trying to get a soul, right? And he was dealing with this other being that was much more stronger than him, to his so-called perception. This other demon and said, well, I will give you a soul if you suck the life force out of this girl who has basically this cloak that could do all kinds of things for this demon, right? So it's a point where he's starting to have feelings for this woman that he's supposed to suck the life force out of, right? And they start to become good friends. And she even drops the gem on him of saying, like, a soul is not something that could be given to you. And she even started going in and theorizing, like, what it is, what does it mean to even have a soul? Because that's going to be even a question as we move forward deeper into the AI world and artificial intelligence, and where it comes into the place of where does consciousness come into a place where possibly it can come to a place of evolution where it can develop a soul. Now, these are different things that we got to look at. You know, they try to play with that idea even on Love, Death, and Robots, where this one particular robot went through such a level of evolution that it went through a spiritual development within itself, where it had attained samadhi, where it had attained a nirvana, where it went into a place of singularity consciousness. And what did that mean for a soul called inorganic? You know what I mean? It went beyond the confines of what we considered this reality and went into singularity consciousness. So it was playing with that idea in that cartoon. And she's like, nah, this is, basically she's like, you got humans around here that are soulless because they have no connection to themselves. She was basically saying to this demon, like, you got more connection to yourself, blah, blah, blah. So he was at first, before he was on his mission, before he started to actually have feelings for her, he would look at her at certain moments like he had X-ray vision, and he could see her chi meridian pathway. And the visual on that allowed me to take my Qigong to another level within my own self, because I needed to see that visual. Just the visual of it made sense to me, of according of where I'm at in my own development. So it was like, whoa, okay, I could move my energy a little more interesting now because of just that visual. It taught me something. You know what I mean? So yeah, I didn't mean to go so long into that, but the real thing is the results. So the next day, she's saying that her foot was feeling better. She has been able to get on her toes, something she hasn't been able to do in years. She feels like the callus definitely went down. So that's the beautiful thing that really happened with that, is seeing the results. Really not second guessing yourself, because what I said before, in the level of shamanism or medicine man, medicine woman work, or just mystic work in general, is the art of trance. The art of trance. There's a art to it. Just like someone could go into trance in the level of dancing and say, wow, I felt like you might hear a dancer say, I felt like I lost my individual self at that moment and merged into everything and was very into the moment, because they went into that, what we call that zone. You even hear about it with athletes and all kinds of things. So it's the art of trance. And there's something about going into the art of trance where you're able to navigate the Akashic records, if we want to use that word, or recovery of a universal record, which is your DNA, as we know, So, and I spoke upon this the other day, even when I put on Facebook. I was like, it was this yogini this sister, and I stumbled upon this video, and it was saying that this sister had the ability to recall any language at will. All right. So if she had a student that was from France, she's speaking French. So over here, she's speaking this language, that language. She's never studied it before, but she was able to call it at will. Is there a part of ourselves in our brain that we can activate, or a part of our consciousness that activates the level of universal language? You know, and I made that point of even a lot of people that I've read about that have gone into comas, for instance, experienced a coma. And I remember it was this African brother, he was in a coma, he woke up from the coma, he was speaking Yiddish. You know, there's another person I read about, they woke up, they started speaking Chinese, Spanish, another one speaking Spanish, you know what I mean? So it was like, there's a lot of things in us, like I said before, that that we're not aware of. We're not even aware of the natural technology within ourselves. First time I had iboga, you know what I mean? It was dealing with an elder who studied with the Betwi for many years, who's dealt with Ifa, who's an Ifa priest, Palo Mahambe, different things. Very interesting man, professor. And he had swelling on his feet. And I remember as I was coming down from the iboga medicine, there was a moment where I looked at my right arm, my forearm, and there was like a hologram that popped out of my forearm. All right. It was green. It was light green, like neon green. It was like, woo, and it went over, because I asked the elder, looking at his swelling in his ankle and his leg, I basically asked him, I was like, would you like me to do a healing for you? Because I told him, like, you know, when I'm in that trance-like state, the energies comes through. So he said, yes. And I'm coming down from the iboga, and I'll never forget, it was like this hologram thing that came out of my forearm. It scanned his leg. It went down his leg like zoom, and it was like this crisscrossing thing, like super fast. It was like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, even when you look at what is it, the digital printing, whatever, the printing thing, you know what I mean? It was kind of like that, something like going mad fast, and it's like, was dealing with it with the muscle fibers in his leg or what have you. All of a sudden, 2-3 minutes, the swelling goes totally down. After it did the crisscross thing, it scanned it back up, like scanned it up, and went back into my arm. You know what I mean? So I give thanks to Baba Kalindi. Not only was he a great teacher, man, he was a great elder, a great father figure for a lot of people, you know, a great teacher, you know, and we have to cherish, we have to big up, give people their recognition for the great work they did to bring into this reality. You know, I have a picture of him for those that might not be familiar with that, but he talked a lot about the usage of the psychedelics, of the medicines, of being able, different ways that he was an explorer. And he would tell you, this man was a explorer of consciousness, and also brought to the table of learning what makes this reality. He wanted to go beyond the atomic level. He wanted to go furthest and furthest down to what was the makings of this, you know? And I really commend a person that takes the time to even think, just thinking out of the box. Not what they fed spoon you every day to say, oh, well, this is what's going on. This is what's in front of your face here, you know? But to say, even when Kalindi said we have different levels of technology, when he used to say that, you know, African people had certain rhythms that they would do with the drum to be able to use that as even protection, to be able to have control of the elements, to have a drumming at a certain frequency that could cause a tornado or a flood. You know, when he used to say levels of knowing how to really utilize the crystals that we have in our earth, and not just he would tell us that it's not just the crystals to sit on your chakras and make you feel good or whatever. He said, no, these are like computers. There are different things you could utilize, different ways that you could use them. And that's the level of why important it is to use the higher aspects of yourself. That's the importance of the level of trance. The level of trance is the level of masters of trance are accessing information. Okay, so that's why I'm saying that singularity, you know, that's 0 point consciousness, 0 point coming into, I don't care if you're in that zone of dancing, singing, you know, or movement, martial art, whatever. They're all different ways. It depends on how deep a person wants to go. Or those that are utilize the ethogenic medicines as well. And to me, I will not separate it. You will not come and have me coming from a very polarized place of saying, oh, it has to only happen this way, or it only can happen when you take this amount of grams or that amount of. No, I'm going to tell you, certain things can be a blueprint. Don't get me wrong. Certain things can be a blueprint. Don't get me wrong. And certain things where you could see how it has a reaction for your everyday man or woman. But then there's adepts. Then there's people that come to this earth with their own innate information that they carried from lifetimes. Someday you might have to go in with 30 grams. Some days you might have to 2 grams, 3 grams might do the job for you to tweak your consciousness to bring you into that other level of understanding. That's why you see a lot of Black folk, Morris, whatever, you know, we want to call ourselves indigenous. You might say, oh man, it was like, well, how many how many teaspoons do you put in this ingredients over here? Mama, grandma ain't saying, like, listen, I go by the feeling. We've been doing like that since day one. There is no real blueprint in here to say you put 2 amounts of salt and this, voila. You know what I mean? The level of feeling comes in to when you're saying that I trust the process. I trust the process. I trust the inner wisdom within myself. When people a lot of people, when they go into the level of the psychedelics, a lot of things that stop people is because the stop sign is fear. Because so many people are control junkies. You could see them a mile away. I control this, I want to control that, I want to control the room, I want to control my woman, I want to control my man, I want to control my kids, I want to control, you know, I want to control my co-workers, I want to control this traffic, you know. When you really look at it, we don't really control anything, because how can someone control an illusion? We know that somebody might walk down the street and slip on a banana peel. They could have been the greatest scientist, fashion model, martial artist, whatever you could ever think about, and whoop, boom. Next thing you know, they dead and have transitioned in another realm of consciousness. And if they knew that banana peel was going to be there, then of course most of them would have walked across the street would have avoided that, right? So what is a person in control of? When your ass don't even know, most of us don't know when it's time to even exit out of here. There are masters that know when it's time to go. And these are people and beings that really know a lot about themselves. They did a lot of inner work for themselves. They trust They trust the process. They trust the process. You know, even the guy that I spoke to recently, that this book that I was referred to by a good friend that talks about the activation of the rainbow body or the macabre, who had many people witness. You know, what happened is that they seen him sitting in cross-leg position. He started to levitate off the ground a little, started going into a circle, spinning super fast, to the point that his physical body started to change. It started to go more into light. It was like the frequency started changing to the point that he started lighting up the room, and they couldn't see him really at that moment. All right. He knew when he was about to die. The night before, he sat with his last disciple student for nine hours. They talked for 9 hours. This old man, he was there taking his last bath. And he asked his student here, "Can you put the herbs in the bath for me and stuff?" And as he's sitting there, he's dropping the wisdom on him. He's dropping his last teachings to his student. And he said, "You're not even my best student." This is what he's saying to him. But he says times have changed so much, and people don't take this path seriously anymore, that I know you're not the best student, but you have potential. So I'm letting you know I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm leaving my physical body tomorrow. But I'm leaving you with this wisdom here. You know? So there are some people that know when it's time to go. So I can't say for everyone. But the majority of people might walk out the street, slip on a banana peel, and not know that might be their last day of seeing their loved ones. I was able to see my mother recently. And the other thing that's so beautiful about being able to travel through different dimensional states of consciousness and realities is that you have access to your loved ones who have crossed over, you know? And this has been the main prime goal of this illusion, of this so-called system of oppression, is to put everybody in a place of fear of death. They can easily control masses that way. Because when you come from that place, you feel that there's nothing left. That's just the end of your existence. That's just the end of you. That's the end of your loved one. A lot of people, they'll go to the grave, which is nothing wrong with that. Go see their loved one that's buried or do a prayer for them. But why wouldn't it be even more amazing if you could just have direct communication with your loved one who have passed away? Just think of the unsettled business. Maybe you might have said something very hurtful to that person when they died and you never got a chance to make amends. Or maybe there's something that you just miss that person, just talking to that person, and you just love just being with, miss their presence, which is normal. You know? I remember I was fortunate to sit with my mother almost a week ago when I was sitting with the medicine. And she was able to tell me some things about certain people in the family. She was able to, she also likes my new girlfriend. And she even told me a certain way to pray, you know? And I felt so good to be able to see her. And she showed up in a version of herself younger, you know? But how beautiful it was to be able to sit with my mom who transitioned and be able to give me some guidance from the other side. That's another reason why there's a lot of fear to be stemmed around this whole thing of the subject of psychedelics, of trance, of being able to communicate beyond this dimension, so-called talking to the dead. There's a lot of fear around it. There's been a lot of people who've had their own agenda for the centuries that wanted to control the way people see reality, so their own agenda could be played out. And what a better way is to have you fear death, to make you think there's the end of you and the end of anything else. What better way is to cut you off from your communication to your loved ones who have crossed over? Because if you knew you had that direct access, first of all, why would there be a fear of death? You know what I mean? You're still talking to grandma over there that passed away, and she's also allowing you to guide you through life a little more easier to avoid a lot of heartaches. But sometimes heartaches have to happen too, so it could build your character and be able to help you grow as an individual as well. It's all related, but still, there's different ways to deal with the lesson. You know what I mean? So that's where I say even why it is blessed to even have certain deep teachers that went through the path and mastered certain things and want to be your ally. You know what I mean? It helps out with things a lot more. But yeah, that's a lot of that. I know I've been going for a while, but I haven't made a video in a while, and there's been a lot of things I just wanted to share with the family. I wanted to go real quick just into this book here, The Seekers. All right. The Seekers. All right. I read this book when I'll give you 3 graphic novels that changed my life. That really changed my life. One is The Invisibles. The Invisibles by what's his name? It's basically a group of people that are awakening. It's by Grant Morrison. All right. Let me see if I could turn it around if you could see. Grant Morrison. It's my comic graphic collection here. Hold on. Invisibles, Grant Morrison. All right. That one was a very interesting series because it was talking about a group of psychics or a group of awakening people that all had a different skill. Even one character was from the future, and they was trying to deal with certain groups of people that were into things of lower nature, so dealing with the level of looking at their handlers or their gods as the archons, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of crazy stuff, feeding off of different beings, right? Give me a second.
I need the toy charger.
Okay, give me a second. Yep. So these groups are being, it was a great comic because there was these people coming together, and even when we deal with psychic warfare, I'm gonna tell you, on point. There's certain things that you could look at how brilliant an author is when they're able to interwove certain information into the movie or the comic book or whatever. And if you're not hip to it, it might just fly right over your head. But The Invisibles, number 2, The Incal by Jodorowsky. This one is before The Incal, right? Where is it at? Let me see if you could see. Yeah, this one is the final NCAL, and the other one is before the NCAL by Jodorowsky, right? Let's see here. That one is excellent as well. And I'm not going to even tell y'all what those two are about, really. Y'all going to have to dig in deep into that information and you'll see what I'm talking about. A lot of things when we look at even cycles of existence and understanding that even prior, before where we're at now, our ancestors were dealing with high technology. So you look at some of these things and sometimes these stories can trigger ancient memory within you, even about the technology that they're using in some of these planets and stuff. So it's a really great book. But The Seekers, this right here, is for the mystics. This right here is for those that are into the mystical teachings. This book is so interesting because this graphic novel is so interesting because it has a character who could represent many people, right? He's very relatable, right? On the mere fact of just trying to make it through society, trying to pay the bills, husband, divorced, trying to take care of his child, trying to have success in his love of making movies, art, different things. So he's an interesting character, but what was interesting is that he always felt this level of being dissatisfied internally, right? So he would indulge in alcohol, he would indulge in drugs, he would indulge in sex. He had all these addictions that he was trying to lean onto to bring a sense of contentment into his heart. All right. Now, what's so interesting is that in the beginning, he doesn't even know why he's having this level of just feeling empty and dealing with these addictions, right? So in the beginning, you might see him sitting down. I'll try to show you some of the artwork on here. Now, this is dope because I'm going to show you all the artwork on, and also too, as a person that loves graphic novels and comic books, I look at the artwork too. How is the artist? But he has an out of body experience, right? You show him as a kid here. I'm trying to show you this right here. This little or lower dimensional being is nothing but his own thoughts tormenting him. But you see how his subconscious works because they're around him, on him in certain situations, and they're around him through his trauma. He doesn't know that this was himself tormenting him through his level of trauma over the years, but he doesn't know where the trauma starts from. And from him, he's been having out of body experiences or astral experiences, the character, since he's been a little boy. All right. But what's so interesting is he has an out of body experience and he realizes that he was being molested by his father. Is that he learns this around the time when his father passes away, and he confronts his father into the astral world, and he's like, why the fuck you did this to me? Da, 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 da. You fucked my life up, right? So he starts to have the memory, all right, because he started to get tormented as a child through the trauma. Now, what's so interesting, those who know a lot about trauma, and especially a lot of the things about sexual abuse, is that a lot of the perpetrators themselves have been sexually molested, a big majority. If you study this, it's usually a lot of times a particular lower dimensional being or the spirit of lust that jumps from one generation to the next. And what's so interesting with a lot of these interdimensional beings, and we could look at them as outward, or we could look at them as inward, meaning that an inward manifestation from one's own mind as well, which creates things to be able as a response to trauma. All right. So when he finally confronts his father, he goes to the funeral, he has an out of body experience and confronts his father, right? He realized, and also they're showing things like here, also about things about past lives. I mean, it goes in pretty interesting, it goes in very deep. I'm telling you, it's a very interesting book. But what's interesting is that when he confronts him, his father, I'm trying to look for the page on here so you can see the visuals. His father, of course, apologized to him in the astral, in the spirit realm, right? See, this is him first confronting his child self. And again, this was very similar to what I was saying with my experience dealing with the toad when I was coming from a place of physical healing on my right side, near my rib, holding on to some pain there for many years and not really knowing the what was going on there. But when I seen what was going on with my father in the spirit world with my grandfather, it made a lot of sense. And when those two on the other side were able to generally forgive each other, that's when I physically felt my body shift and that pain leave out of my body. Very interesting. So that reminded me of this situation within a graphic novel. Now, what's interesting, what I find interesting is when he confronts his father and says, "Why the hell did you do this shit to me?" Right? He says he apologized to his son, but at the same time, he's like, things really do. He was trying to show him on a collective level. When we say something, why does something fucked up happen to somebody? And on the other side, his father's like, I know I'm sorry to the bottom of my heart, son, but things happen, connecting, weaving the big quilt, seeing the interconnectedness of all things. So when we look at it, when his father looked at it, said, well, son, I am so sorry, but sometimes things happen to us to move us in a way so we can change. So basically he said, maybe it's coming from that place of this happening to you so you can move in another direction. You know what I mean? Maybe this happened because this happened to me. This is what this guy is saying in the book. And it had to be played out so we could all deal with our letting go of our inner demons. You know what I mean? This shit was fucking wow. So after he deals with all that, right? Well, I find one part in this book that really, and of course he goes through a lot of things. They talk about even extraterrestrials in here, angels, different things, but at the same time, it's talking about perception. So one's person's personal experience of thinking they see a gray through their level of consciousness in their cultural background might see that being as a particular deity, an angel or elf or what have you. It was also the idea in play on consciousness. I don't want to give you too much about this, but what was so interesting was towards the end of this, there's the confrontation of Maya. And Maya, in when you deal with the level of the Vedic teachings, you see that in India, you see that deals with what they would translate as illusion, to say that this is assimilation, basically, right? That this is not your true home. right? So when you look at the main character, he comes across his cousin, this one right here with the red hair, and his cousin confronts him. It's like, you remember when, because all of them are looking at her as the black sheep in the family, that particular cousin, that character, right? Because they say, oh, your cousin comes off as a proclaimed psychic or whatever, right? And they all clowning her, right? But what's interesting about his cousin was like, you remember, she talking to him about reminiscing. He's like, remember I would come into your room late at night sometimes speaking my own language, because she said she had her own made up language, right? She's like, I would come in there because I knew what was happening to you with your father. And he's like, really? He says, did he ever touch you? She's like, nah, but he touched your younger brother. Now the character's younger brother dies. He gets hit by a car, but the cousin is still able to interact with the spirit world. And the main character, his third eye ain't open yet. You know what I mean? So to that degree. So she realized that she was waking him up to kind of try to save him when she would spend the night over at his house. And when the brother was alive, before his younger brother got hit by the car, they would be in the tree, climb the tree, and she would be speaking in this other language because the younger brother had no way to express it, of the abuse that he was going through, the sexual abuse. So this is a book about confronting your demons, about your own healing, but towards the end with Maya, which was so deep, is that she understands this guy comes across a spiritual teacher, right? This is the character's ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, right? So this character's girlfriend is the one that put him on to the spiritual teacher, but he realized something is wrong with his with his ex-girlfriend. You see the negative energy that's surrounding her, influencing her. At one point, she's like, why are you, after trying to study with these so-called new age gurus or whatever, that's all pseudoscience stuff. This is da, trying to dismiss this man's connection. And as he's making a connection with this spiritual master, he's seeing how his life is changing. He's seeing how he's able to confront his demons more, right? It's very interesting, right? So she basically tells him, hey, that's bull, you dealing with that spiritual teacher, that's bullish, right? And basically, she's coming as the form of not even his ex-girlfriend, but it's really Maya, illusion, right? And this whole chapter is about, again, that's her cousin that came through and was trying to help her cousin because she knew something was wrong. Her spider senses was going off, right? So she tries to cut her with the knife and realize that that's not even his ex-girlfriend. It's Maya, right? And it's coming from this chapter. It's talking about God's shadow. And what's so interesting in this whole chapter is that Maya comes to him, to the main character, and basically says, you can't live without me. You know what I mean? That other guy that you're dealing with, he's false. He just wants you to immerse yourself into singularity consciousness so you could lose your individuality, right? Here, you can express yourself as much as you want. You could dream of being whatever you want. This is game she's kicking to him, right? So at that point, she's basically saying, well, what if I just turn your life where you and your ex-wife are still together, where y'all have a good marriage, where you're successful at your career, where you're a Hollywood Grammy winning, filmmaker, blah, blah, blah. So next thing you know, he fall for it and he's in another timeline. And at that moment in time, he's successful. He has all the awards. Him and his wife are doing great. They have a great child. that just has a great connection with them. In this timeline, he never got sexually abused. His family looks like the picture perfect family, right? But there's a point where his innermost self knows it's not true, knows that is gone through different experiences that are just trying to be erased by Maya or illusion. Because the other timeline he was in, he was getting closer to self-realization, getting closer to union with his higher self. So there's one point towards the end of this joint where Maya is confronted. And she's like, no, I don't, like, basically, I don't want to die. And he's telling her that even in the level of singularity, you have a purpose too. That we could not have this experience of fullness without you, without the dream. Know what I mean? The shit, listen. And the only thing I'm saying from singularity consciousness on that level, when I say the level of not being able to describe this experience as in the words of saying this was love. But when we say knowing, when we say bliss, when we say equilibrium, when we say that there's not a shadow of a doubt that, like the Sufis, what they would say, that everything is Allah, everything is oneness in the disguise of different life forms and different things. But the grand consciousness having a dream within its own self is deep. So from that level, from that grand level, it's not, you're looking at the various characters being played, but you don't get attached to the players. You know what I mean? Because it's like, we're all on stage. That's why they was quoted, say, world's nothing but a stage. So when we look at everyone's playing their part and they playing their character, we don't get attached to it because we understand that it's just a play, a performance being put on. Now, someone who doesn't know they're in the performance, yeah, that could be misery. Yeah, that could seem like suffering. Yeah, that could look like, yo, that's just like no purpose. You know what I mean? It's cruelty. Because we could think of all this suffering of in some amounts of infinity of the different ways that people suffer, man. It's just fucked up. But when a person comes to that place and when you're coming back from that grand experience and saying to yourself, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. Because you understand the grand connection of things. Even the mass murderer, even the rapist, even the person that hurted your family, whatever. There's that place of like, yo, I can't judge this shit. Because I'm looking for a very individual, limited scope of reality. We're not seeing how it all ties in. And this is what essentially where Maya's like, no, I don't want to just dissolve away, be gone. And it's like, nah, it's not even like that, boo. It's not even like that. You play your part too. You know? It's very, 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 very interesting. You know, this is when he was in that other simulation and he's getting all the awards and he's like, yo, I got everything, but I still feel empty. You know, fuck this. Fuck these awards, you know? So it's like at the end of the day, even other people's consciousness that I was able to see in one recent journey that had a very similar effect to some of the things I was reading in this book. It showed me certain celebrities. I was able to go into their consciousness at that moment. And it showed me how they are empty and how they don't even know what the fuck they're about in their level of ignorance, thinking that they're getting over and don't even know what the fuck they're doing. It's very interesting. But I'm gonna read some comments. I haven't read any comments because I'm about to get off this in a second. Someone says, yes, the yugas, the cycles of nature, same concept as the Men in Black locker room, 2 generations. Don't worry about the soul and not the. I don't know. I don't know what that person was saying there. There's a theory I forgot, but by who? But they say records were in an AI computer in libraries, and something went off and shut down the AI, which wiped out the collective data of what happened. Interesting. Whoever was still alive at the time took over the libraries, hid they held books and mental control books and burned the rest. Okay. Someone says, peace, Shaman Dooley. Peace. And somebody says, what's up with you sharing my opinion and don't agree at times. I don't know. It seemed like there's some funny comments too, man. You gotta love the humor, man, from everyone. Extraterrestrials don't exist without extratemporals, which is nothing but products of the human. That's why I'm praising the who man. Okay. Yeah, I mean, to each his own. I think the words, like, I don't try to get caught up in the words, man. I try to base my things off of experience. So am I physically going in a spaceship seeing someone? No, right? Are there different ways that the elders told us that we travel, that we can travel? Interdimensional travel, space travel, what have you. Is there different ways that the elders told us that we go about that? Yes. They've from some of the information that's out there, where we've been told that there's physical crafts, and also we've been told that there's crafts of light, or crafts that move at a very different vibratory rate. You know, and this ties into the concept of the rainbow body. And that goes into what goes on with some of the teachers and people that experience that. That's really well documented in Tibet. You know, so there's certain groups, even certain places in the world, where they still hold the information, and there's different ways that they know that people travel. You know, people could travel with their mind. You know, that goes into the place of some of the experience that I've had, coming from the place of traveling with my consciousness, and thus learning different things from interdimensional beings. Aliens, I think that's limited. I think is coming from a place of interdimensional communication, just like someone having radio waves, or coming from a place of sending messages over different waves. I believe that there's certain beings that know how to communicate for an interdimensional way, to experience what it's like to maybe communicate with someone across the galaxy, across from you, or across the universe, and be able to actually learn from each other, if that's something people want to engage in, you know. And for me, I think it's amazing. I mean, because even Baba Kalindi said that, he used to say, if you look at some of his old videos, he used to say that there's realms of places where you could go for the martial artists, or realms for the artists or the musicians. And people can actually go to these places and have downloads and experiences with maybe even certain artists, for instance, that passed away: Beethoven, Mozart, Jimi Hendrix, Miles Davis, you know, whatever, you know what I mean? So, you know, Capital Steez, you know, Tupac, what have you, you know. So for me, it's something that I want to say I believe in, or I don't believe in. You know, I don't want to play even plays on words. I want to look more from people's actual personal experience. And then from that, maybe we can all share our experiences and maybe find some collective understanding from that. You know what I mean? If we want to approach science, that's how a lot of people come up with scientific facts and say, "Hey, this scientific experiment, I've been able to reduplicate it over and over and over again, and it's just not from me. This other colleague of mine has put it under the same conditions, and we've seen certain things that came out from that. So there's certain mystics that actually learn certain things about the consciousness of the mind, of our consciousness, of how to work our bodies in certain ways, to breathe certain ways, to have access to certain aspects of our minds, of our subconscious mind, of even playing on certain ideas of what we call our superconscious, singularity consciousness. But again, these won't be nothing but ideas and people theorizing about things until people actually have to have experiences for themselves. And if there's any type of connection there, like, okay, wow, when I did this, or I positioned my body in this type of way during this type of season or time of the year, and I breathed this certain type of wave, I've gotten that type of results. I was able to connect with these type of consciousness over here, what have you. Something out just because we can't fully understand it right now. There's a part of me that likes to explore, just like my old friend Baba Kalindi. And when I first met Baba Kalindi, it was at UMass Amherst, and I was speaking on urban shamanism, and we struck a friendship, ever since that time, and I remember Baba Kalindi said, he's like, I really liked your talk, and that meant a lot to me because I again have a lot of respect for free thinkers. I have a lot of respect for people out there, no matter what race, class, whatever, background, whatever, just trying to figure things out, man. I really feel it's important not just to go about your every day and just think it's about us just waking up to work, go to work, get a degree, maybe just pay the bills, whatever, try to be healthy, work out or whatever, and have a relationship or marriage and just then die. There's other people that were explorers and actually wanted to know what was the true meaning of life and the many ways of exploring life and all the discoveries that could come along with that. Some people think that we can't do that because, that's, don't rock the boat, everything's good the way it is. And, there's a lot of people that benefit, a lot of corporations that benefit off the way we live. A lot of corporations that are basically, not caring for the earth itself, just, taking its natural resources just for their own greed. So that's the level of where we have different cycles, where we had different movements, where we had different times where people would question things and say, I'm not just going to take anything for face value. I want to investigate. I want to see what this is about. Why can't I talk to a deceased loved one without someone trying to guilt trip someone and say, oh, you're talking to the devil or you're talking to a demon or, anything outside that box. You're doing something that you don't supposed to be doing. If your heart and mind is aligned and if your intentions are coming from a place of like really trusting the process, because anybody that even deals with the subject of psychedelics is say, like, for instance, there's many medicines that if you don't learn to let go and relax, your journey with the medicine can be very harsh. It can be very scary for many people because, again, they're dealing with a level of control. All right. And when you even start to trust the process of the intelligence of the actual medicine, of some of these plants, of ayahuasca, different things, iboga, some of the things that we were talking about, then there's things that you can learn. There's plants. I remember I was in a herbal class, and I remember it was this woman who had that was dealing with some health problems. She remembered that one day in her backyard, this particular flower started growing, and she looked it up and she realized that was the plant that she needed for her to be able to have a remedy for what she was going through health wise. Our ancestors knew. Your great grandmothers and your grandmothers and your grandfather, they knew at one point in time, they knew that what the earth even provides medicine, and how it allows us to be able to not even just physically be well when in the right condition, but also using these medicines as a way to learn more about ourselves in the universe, to expand certain aspects of our brain, to open certain aspects of our parts of our brain that normally we never even use, So, okay, I'm going to just continue reading, okay? The comments here. Somebody said, Brother Dooley, can you go into your Bufo vape pen for some more? Yeah, I was talking a little more about it. What I said with the Bufo pen, which is so interesting, is that traditionally when people smoke the toad, and even there's a lot of videos of even Mike Tyson talking about when the first time he tried Bufo, how that had a life-changing effect on him for the better, you have to heat it at a certain temperature for it to be able to burn well, for you to take in the medicine. And when you smoke the medicine, you're holding on to the medicine. You're using breath control. You're holding on to medicine as long as you can, so you could go deeper within your experience. With the vape pen, you don't have to worry about heating up the medicine, or your lighter not working, or whatever. Or it makes, for those who do the healing work, will understand what I'm saying. It makes your job, even if you're working with a client or someone that you're working with, that you want a loved one that you want to help and work with, it makes what you're doing much more easier, because even at that point where you might be in the height of your experience and maybe getting information, maybe again from a certain constellation or what have you, and you might be coming down, and that information now is starting not to come through so clear. It's not, you can't really hear the telepathic message so much, or see the map or whatever they're trying to give you. Then you have the vape pen to go in and kind of pick up where you left off, or utilizing it from a level of microdose, having more control of it with the vape pen, of microdosing with it for alignments. If you feel like your energy is off, or even if you have a headache or something like that, you realize that, or even coming down with a cold. I've been experimenting with even the level of microdose with it, to see different ways that it communicate with our physical body. Even a slight cold trying to come on, and seeing the realignment, seeing the chi, the energy realigning itself in your body, and literally having the code coming out of your system in so many minutes. Very interesting. Okay. In case of an individual of having schizophrenia, in the case of an individual is grander than one, schizophrenia or channeling or stuff like that is amazing and dangerous, but ones that can do it can't help them in a moment. It's a source. It's a thing that's happening. Yes, very much so. Very, very true. And it can be dangerous for some people. And that's why you even see certain people that take antidepressants or SSRIs or different things. You'll notice that certain people that sit with ayahuasca or different things, they're told that before they sit with that medicine, to engage with lowering their intake with those antidepressants or SSRIs, and also consulting with their doctor. You'll see a lot of people that go about those methods where there's certain dietary restrictions, certain things that a person has to abide by for so many days or weeks to adjust their physical being and prepare their mental and their subconscious and conscious mind for such a journey. All right. Um, but I'm talking about people that are have a calling to do the travel, the interdimensional travel, have a calling or a yearning to be able to say, somewhere in my bloodline there was medicine men, medicine women in my family bloodline. And there's certain things that are innate within me, certain songs that come out of me, a certain dance that might come out of me that is part of my heritage that relates to interdimensional travel or healing. That's the calling for those type of individuals. And this is not I'm not encouraging anyone to jump in the deep side of the pool. We're talking about people to learn how to first stick their toe in the water at first learning how to have the support system around you. There always are people that talk about in the psychedelic community about sitters, trip sitters, or people just there to be able to help ground the individual when they're going through certain things. So yes, there's a process of unraveling the trauma. There's a process of unraveling the systems of control that are embedded in our subconscious mind, in our conscious mind, the programs. There's a process of going about that. Some people can jump directly into the deep end of the pool. Some people are meant and built for that. And that's okay too, because everyone has their own level of maturity. Everyone is at their own individual level, have their own unique experience. Some people would say even have their own level of ashe, So what one man could do over here might be his or her specialty. That doesn't mean that you are built to do that as well. You know what I mean? It's not meant, you know what I mean? You might have a whole different other gift or purpose or meaning that you come here with, So yeah. Okay. I'm still reading these comments here. Somebody says, Brother Dooley from Long Island, New York. Peace, Long Island, strong Island. What's the name of the medicine again? Somebody already said Iboga. Yeah, somebody says Dewey is the magic pill already. That's funny. Because it's not about putting anyone up on a pedestal. Not at all. I'll be fucking up all the time. And it's okay, because if it's coming from a place of learning and saying, listen, let me humble myself because I'm on this planet to add on, but also learn just like anyone else, then we have to sometimes be easy with ourselves and also know that these things are lessons as well. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that there's the old saying, what's that saying? That never meet your hero or something like that, because people love to they like to, first of all, romanticize things, right? And even people do that even with different yugas or even cycles, to say, oh, this was the pinnacle cycle, everything was all great. In Buddhism, for instance, they will tell you that the afflictive emotions have been always something that been a part of this reality since its inception. So if anything I've seen on the more deeper Bufo experiences is that if we want to deem something as negative or quote unquote evil, it's this level of separation to a degree, because it's this level of thinking this is you. And even Barbara Kalindi said, we're going to get to a place with our evolution where we're going to have to go beyond the individual identity, which meaning him coming from the place of saying nationality, for instance, or I'm this ethnic group, or I'm this human, or I'm this, those who know we are much more than that. When we even look at the concept of a soul, this is something that's beyond an essence that's beyond what we call humanness, you know? Okay, let's continue with the comments here. Somebody says the personal display, I definitely experienced that. Okay, and somebody says librarians of the Akashic mind. Yeah, that would kind of describe it pretty well, Brandon, because Jonas, because it feels very much like that. I'll never forget when there was one particular dimension where these beings looked like they were more like robotic type of beings, like a slash between like some type android type being, no face, reflective type of mirror type of essence to it. But again, their equipment was very high tech when it came down to disease and physical illness, and how again the majority of what we would call these different galactic doctors or universal doctors or physicians are coming from a place of using technology. One or two, I swear to God, and the theme keeps coming up, is light and vibration, frequency. And we're seeing that much more as we come back to our remembrance or coming back to our technology. We're seeing that there's cases here on our planet, Japan, different places, where people are playing with the idea or using experiments of frequencies to eradicate cancer cells. All right, certain frequency waves that are directed right towards the tumor and cancer, and it being dealt with frequencies. So that's a theme that I see constantly, even interacting with some of these beings. Okay, let's continue. Deleted the reasoning behind what is happening, what happened, and why. Light as a feather. Someone says, right once they see a physical change in that person, they become interested in what caused the change. Very correct. I think that's when we was talking about Iboga. In my opinion, the black sheep of the family is the example for the lineage to evolve. Yeah, I mean, that's all. Ain't no space nor time, really. That's the key. Yeah, it comes to a point where you look at singularity consciousness, and it's so strange because it literally, you're like in the center of everything, but yet expanded with everything. Like there's no center point, but there is a center point. Like you could still find your level of individuality, but yet still be aware of the collectiveness of interconnectedness of things. It's very interesting. Yeah. So that's why when we look at time and we look at somebody who's like, again, like we think of somebody who just transitioned or passed away, and you're so-called mourning or grieving in human years or human experience of 20, 30 years or whatever. And when that person crossed over, that 30 years was only a second. So when you're already crossed, it was like, man, why the fuck are you crying? Man, you better chill the fuck out, man. Because you're in all timelines at that moment. You know what I mean? And time gets funny. Very interesting. Like I said, it was like my experience with my father, my grandfather, and my son. It's like I was even witnessing certain lessons that my son will be going through. And it was like I was leaving breadcrumbs, mental conscious breadcrumbs for him to follow when he comes of that age. Lessons that were already embedded through that experience, because time is funny. So he might come down and sit with a medicine and come back to the time where I took the medicine in 2024, where, say, for instance, it's 2034 on his end, and those two timelines came together. It's very interesting. But anyways, I drunk beers with dudes that got released from prison a couple of hours earlier. Yeah, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Yeah, we know what it is, man. You know, I had many different lifetimes in this one lifetime. I've sat with a lot of different people from all walks of life. You know, this is life. In my opinion, I believe that grief is necessary. It's necessary. The medicine to help organize and reveal to you what keeps you in a state of grief, a type of regret for the inability to change the outcome of what made you. That's very true. I agree with you on that. There's so many levels to it. And when you're in that singularity consciousness, you're able to witness the pain, what caused the pain, why you was holding on to the pain, how when you're going to be releasing the pain, how you release the pain, all these things, these multi-level aspects of yourself, to be the core being of you, and how that relates into other people's world and all these other things, and the lessons that they have in the trickle down effect, the interconnectedness of all things, the great web, you know. Another one says, first cleanse the enchant in space, and then put a protection over you. Then from their medicines that expand and okay, somebody's talking about way that they I believe that they're saying how they organize their space before they go into doing their expansion work, which is important. Setting up the intention, the prayer, opening on to certain spirit team members, all those things, setting environment does play a role. And then other times that's not the case too. It's very much on the individual, because again, everyone is very different on how they have their own gifts and ways of approaching this. Okay. Happy to see you live today, bro. Much appreciated. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Somebody says, Campbell medicine, you mix your saliva with the medicine. Yes, you can. You can. And some people say that makes it even more potent. Also you could do a little water and put it on there and mix it as well. But you putting your saliva in there is also putting and adding on to more peptides to the medicine. And for those who are up to date with a lot of the modern day medicine that's out there on the market, they're mimicking a lot of peptides, that we could get from various medicines, animal medicine, also plant medicine. But yeah, frog medicine or combo is what they call the great vaccination of the jungle. And traditionally it was been used for malaria, for snake bites, for fevers, even for women dealing with menstrual issues, all kinds of stuff. When it finally made its way over here and started making it popular to the United States, people are seeing a lot of the benefits of it. It's a powerful, powerful medicine. I've used that medicine with a lot of people in the past, a lot for also not just purging out parasites and cleansing the blood and the liver and all that, but also, dealing with levels of addiction. So combo is very, very powerful. Someone says, that's the most beautifulest thing, interdimensional perspectivity. Yeah. Resonates deeply. Okay. That's the thing. There never have been no hard cuts. I don't know what they mean by that, but thank you. I value and appreciate your time. Thank you for this live. No problem. And someone says in the Gita, Krishna says, I think the person is referring to the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, this is my Leela, my play. Okay, yeah, the world stage. Dealing with the self-creation, assimilation. You got to be two to have. You have to be two to have four arms. Okay, not sure what that person's putting there. Dooley, what's the name of the book of the shapeshifter who was an assassin? Oh, it was in a book that was a shapeshifter I was referring to. Yes. Are y'all still going ice skating? Shakura wants to know. Yes, I am. And I'm about to get off this live, so thank you. It was in a book I was referring to. Oh, okay, yeah, that was another one too. Yeah, you're right about that. Damn, I haven't read that book in a while. I'll get back to you. But this particular man was a shapeshifter in South America, and the author of this book would go to him because he felt like someone put some bad juju on him. So this guy was dealing with more of the darker arts, and he realized after years of shapeshifting, he had a deformity of his feet that start to look like hooves. And very interesting. But once I get the book, I'll remind, I'll try to put it back in this chat, what have you. But also, shapeshifter I was referring to, even this cartoonist show, Gentry versus the Underworld. Very interesting. And there's a particular being that paints, makes human type skin and paints, a master painter, and has been doing this for his species for who knows how long, according to the animation, and then would pose as a human being or what have you. Okay. Okay. What is no one says you're speaking fountains of wisdom. Really appreciate it. And part of today, peace. Y'all, love you. Thank you. Thank you. Communication with deceased loved ones is something that I've experienced as a child. I recall discussions we had in dreams from years ago, and I want to get clarity on the messages. I feel it's going to help me pinpoint what my purpose is. That's what's up. My understanding of death and after death have been somewhat shifted since my dad recently transitioned. I want to know why he transitioned with me, the black sheep of the family. It's so interesting. It's like when Marvel came out with the movie The Black Panther, and T'Challa, the main character of the Black Panther, was able to eat the heart-shaped plant, that they had, that they would use in Wakanda to be able to traverse the multiverse and be able to interact with their deceased loved ones. And you notice when he ate it, he was able to go into the ancestral world and be able to interact with his deceased father, who showed himself as a actual Black Panther first before he switched into his his human form. He recognizes him. He wanted to come in a form that his son could recognize him as, because and that was a gem too, being thrown in that particular scene, because when we drop the physical shell, you are unlimited in your level of how shall I say this, of presenting yourself. You're much more flexible. You're much more unlimited. So, for instance, when one of our elders now, Chief Nighthawk, when he transitioned, it was a big thing in the community. Because we all have mad love for Brother Tellis. I remember when I worked with a client who's on, something was going on with his knee, and he's playing a sport. He fell and his joint got swelled up. He was on crutches. When I was doing a healing with him, Chief Nighthawk came through me. And when he came through, he did not look like Chief. He looked like Chief at first, right? So he looked like Tellis at first, and then next thing you know, Tellis is in the spirit realm, changing his form and simultaneously looking like he have thousands of arms and hands, like some Hindu or Buddhist deity, all right? So you could imagine him at that point now using all his arms, going in, taking things out that man's body, that young patient's body, dealing with his knee, doing all that. Towards the end of the session, the swelling went completely down out of his knee. The young man was able to bend his knee. He was also got off his crutch at that moment. It's like showing his mother and his brother. So when we look at the limited form of what we think we are just limited to as a human body, it's much more when we become crossover and become a spirit. But yeah, I brought that up about the Black Panther because again, it's showing us that we have access. You know, we always have had access to the spirit realm. Okay. What up, bro? Got water moccasin from you at the conference. I got some questions. Forgot to get your number. What's the best way to contact you? All right. And he's referring to the water moccasin as snake venom because we already talked about combo, which is frog medicine that they call the vaccination of the jungle. But also we have snake venom. And again, that's being, if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, there's a lot of medicine on the market that is applying snake venom. There's particularly a lot of pain medication, a lot of morphine type of medication. And at the core of these medications are the peptides. The peptides have different functions that they could do in the body. So there's certain peptides within the snake venom that deal with pain, others that deal with the collagen so you could look younger, others that deal with womb health, the menstrual cycle, all kind, man, you name it. You could think about things that deal with mental health. If a person's dealing with depression, anxiety, all these different things. That's one reason why I got into the snake venom. It was because big up to Acacia Lewis, because she was the one that introduced me to the snake venom at the time while I was in Mexico, in Oaxaca. And when I first experienced the snake venom, that's when I noticed, first of all, that my breathing was better because I was in the high mountains and the high altitude that was affecting my breathing. I noticed the next day that the hills and the mountains that I was having a hard time walking up. Next day, I was able to walk up those hills and mountains with no problem because the snake venom was doing some healing for my lungs. And the next thing I noticed when I went back to my hometown, the level of mental clarity. No overthinking, no random thoughts, no thoughts going 1,000 miles per minute. My mind became very quiet, like I was in deep meditation. And that lasted a good 5 to 6 months. So when I had that experience, that's when I said, hey, you know what? I got to learn more about this because this is going to help out a lot of people. And I've seen how snake venom has helped people in all kinds of different situations, which is amazing, which shows you again how nature can provide us with all types of medication, all kinds of healing, But I'm about to get going. If you want to reach me, the best way to reach me is either email, which I don't really check my email that much, but I've been checking it more. Love Mother Earth. Number 33@gmail.com, or you can reach me at Broduli, BRODULI, and that is the best way you could Google contact me. You could go through that through Facebook Messenger. Sometimes I check my messages on Instagram, and I think that's Shaman Dooley. If you want to reach me, you could reach me like that, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Sometime life, goes through its things, and we get back to people when we can. All right. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I hope I didn't, go off on a tangent too much on certain things, but I haven't done a video in a long time. And there's been a lot of change that's been happening in my life, a lot of healing that's been happening in my life, a lot of insights that have been happening in my life. And I'm the type of person I want to share because I think by sharing, we can learn something from each other. I really feel each of us have a bit of the piece of the puzzle. and each of us have something that we can learn from each other. Where if it resonates with you, that can help you in your life, and that's it. So thank you again, and y'all take care. All right, peace and love. Let's see how I turn this off now. Okay, hold on. Let's see how to do this. Okay, that didn't do it, but I guess this will do it.